Well met, and welcome to the 2016 Hearthstone Championship Tour America Spring Championship. I'm Robert Wing, joined on the desk by Cora and Brian Kibler. 6 players have booked their passage to the Hearthstone World Championship at BlizzCon later this year. After this weekend, we will have our 7th player. Cora, obviously you were casting the Asia Pacific Championship last week. You did a great job. How'd you enjoy it?
Oh, I had a great time, Rob, and thanks for your kind words.
Yep.
Yeah, it was an excellent tournament. Handsome Guy booked his ticket to BlizzCon, going to be facing off against Cydonia, and I'm really excited to see what this week has to bring.
Yeah, I'm kind of, a little sad, actually. I sat that one out. There were a lot of Yogg-Saron mages. I feel like I would have been right at home, but excited to be back. Brian, you also had the weekend off, so how's your week been?
It's been great, definitely excited to get back into the action here and see who will be moving on to BlizzCon.
Yeah, we have 8 fantastic players, a lot of great stories, great players, and these are people coming in who you may not necessarily have heard of just yet. By the end of the weekend, we feel pretty confident you're going to know exactly who they are. Let's talk a little bit about how they got here. Story's pretty much the same if you've been watching the Championship Tour up to this point. We're talking double elimination, best of 5 conquest, 128 plus players, had to qualify at local fireside gatherings. So, like I said, story very much the same up to this point for qualifying, but at the championship level for the spring season, there have been some changes that have resulted in, some pretty interesting differences for some of our players who have had to advance, or rather gotten to. Let's take a look at that. It is best of 7 now, single elimination, still conquest, but yeah, adds a whole different layer of complexity to the matchup. Cora, what's it like going into this best of 7 single elimination?
It's much higher stakes, though the players are going to be playing more games within a match. Whereas with double elimination, you can go in on the first day, maybe have a bit of a rough start,
right,
not play at your top, and then come in the second day with more confidence and play a little bit better and still make it through. With single elimination, 1 loss and you're out.
Yeah, it's win or go home at this point, so very tense, and these players are playing for a lot too. Not only is there a handsome prize purse, there's a title of America Spring Champion. Obviously, that's something you want to have, but I think most importantly, you're playing for the opportunity to go to the Hearthstone World Championship at BlizzCon. You could be the best player in the world for 2016. Brian, what's it like getting to that point and having the opportunity to play at the World Championship?
Going to the World Championship is really the goal of any competitive player in any game. It gives you the opportunity to, as you said, fight for the opportunity to be called the World Champion. Anyone coming from any kind of background can really respect that no matter what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen prior winners of the World Championship take that opportunity and leverage it into something big. Firebat casting all over the place now, constantly playing at the highest level, streaming. Firebat's doing it all. Ostkaka continues to be one of the most well-respected technical players in the world. Now, the big question is, into the season, who will be joining them for the 2016 season? We take a look at some of the players who advanced thus far. We have Amnesiac, Diane, Naaman, Breath from China, Tice, and as of this past weekend, Handsome Guy was able to come back after losing in the winter season to Diane and come back, and now he's qualified. So a lot of really cool stories thus far, and I think we're going to get even cooler ones coming out of this weekend. Like I said, 8 players. We talk about the concept of an underdog story all the time, but these players are all really just across-the-board players that are unknown. They don't necessarily have the stories associated with them, but they're going to have the opportunity to prove it right here this weekend. Let's go ahead and take a look at the bracket for the America Spring Championship. The 8 players that advanced from the America Spring Preliminary were Cydonia, Deerjason, Dwayne, Napoleon, Joster, PNC, Bradford Lee, and Rosty. So again, like I said, kind of an odd man's group if you're looking and you're watching at home and you don't necessarily know the scene very well. There's some really good players here.
Yeah, this looks a lot like the Winter Europe Championship, where there weren't really all that many terribly well-known players coming into the event, but afterwards, a lot of those players definitely made a mark on viewers' minds.
Yeah, a lot of them were able to join teams, find more consistent streaming, just really improve what they had in the Hearthstone community. So very excited to see who can pull it off from this particular group. Let's go ahead and, Corey, walk us through the day 1 schedule.
Absolutely. So day 1, quarterfinal number 1 is going to be Cydonia versus Deerjason. Following that, quarterfinal number 2, Dwayne versus Napoleon, and Joster versus PNC will be the 3rd match of the day. Rounding out the day will be Bradford Lee versus Rosty in quarterfinal number 4.
Cora, any of these matches stand out to you that you're looking forward maybe more than others?
Well, I'm looking forward to casting quarterfinal number 3 with you, Rob. We're going to be casting Joster versus PNC, but I'm actually really excited to see Bradford Lee versus Rosty. I think these are 2 of perhaps the strongest players coming into it, so I think it's really interesting that they got matched up in the first round.
Yeah, I like your first answer there. That was very tactically navigated.
Oh, well.
Well done, Cora. Let's take a look at the day 2 schedule now. We're going to have semifinal 1, semifinal 2, which will culminate in the grand finals. Again, the winner of this wins the money, wins the title, wins the opportunity to go to the Hearthstone World Championship later this year. So much on the line for these guys in terms of what they can translate this event into. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Hearthstone Championship Tour schedule. Obviously, we are closing out the Spring Championship season right now with the America Spring Championship. I have a little bit of a break in between before we get into the Summer Series, where it's going to be the Europe Summer Preliminary from August 12th to 14th, and the Americas Summer Preliminary from August 19th to 21st. So while it looks like there's a little bit of a break in the action, it's really more the opportunity for people at home.
Yeah, the players here all got their chance through the preliminary by earning the Hearthstone Championship Tour points, whether through the ladder or Open Cups. That's exactly the opportunity that any of the viewers at home might have if they want to find themselves on this stage next time.
Right, this is one of those situations where, again, the theme of the Hearthstone Championship Tour is the players who are playing the best and the players that want it the most are going to make it to this stage. And, you know, we've seen some great stories coming out from players that last year didn't necessarily have that chance. So absolutely agree with you, Brian. Get out there, play in ranked play season, play in those online cups, try it at majors like DreamHack, where we've seen so much success, and go ahead and stake your claim as one of the best players in your region. Let's go ahead and start previewing the matchups for today, though. Quarterfinal number 1, as we said, is going to be Cydonia versus Deerjason, and these are two players who are coming at a little bit different points in their career. Deerjason, we saw in 2014 at the Americas Championship, was 1 win short of BlizzCon. I mean, that's one of those things where I have to imagine that kind of haunts you on some level. You are so close to making it to the biggest stage in competitive Hearthstone, but he's here to prove this time, that success wasn't a fluke, and he can go the distance. Cydonia, a Canadian player coming in, and this is actually more of a hobby for him, right? Like, he's a naturally competitive guy and, wants to come in here and show that he can be the best, but he's not looking to necessarily make a career out of this.
It's kind of funny that Deerjason is kind of the grizzled veteran in this particular lineup, and he's 16 years old. He made it within 1 win of the World Championship back when he was 14. So we saw Amnesiac win the Winter Championship in the Americas region. Deerjason, around the same age.
Yeah, he was 14. He was a young man back when he did this. He's an old man now, Brian. He's like us. He's ready to join us on the desk. He's not a young man anymore. Cora, what do you like of Deerjason's chances to basically reverse history this time?
I think he's definitely the one coming in who has the most to prove, because he did make it so far in 2014 at only 14 years old and was 1 win away from that championship. So definitely wants to come in here, has been on this stage before, knows what it's like to play under the pressure of being so close to that championship. So I think definitely the confidence, the determination, and the desire to show the audience that he really does have what it takes to make it to BlizzCon.
Completely agree, but he'll have to get through Cydonia first. Let's go ahead and take a look at his road to the America Spring Championship. As I said, Cydonia, hailing from Canada, a little bit of a veteran. He's closer to our age, Brian, so he's going to have to come in here and beat a 16-year-old kid if he wants to make it to the semifinals. Looking at his road, though, just 1 out in the America Spring Preliminary, so beat all of his opponents, never got sent to the lower bracket. We saw him take on some impressive names there.
Yeah, he did defeat Snail, who was the Latin American representative in the winter season in the Americas Championship, as well as Joster, who is one of the competitors here as well, and Legolas with a capital S.
What a guy!
We've kind of fallen in love with here.
Yeah, in rehearsals, I mean, Legolas with a capital S. Like, how do you beat that guy? Like, Legolas was intimidating enough. Capital S. Come on.
Taking it to another level.
And we see him booking his ticket here against Joster. And this was a match where Cydonia was down 2-0, had to battle back through Joster's Freeze Mage deck in 3 state games. So definitely a player who is able to play under the pressure of a situation like that. Certainly a quality that will be important in an environment with as high stakes as this one.
Yeah, and in talking to him just all weekend, the guy doesn't really have nerves. Like, he's coming in here. He actually plays a lot of sports in general. He plays hockey. He plays against his friends, and he advertises himself as being the competitive member of his group who almost, plays a little too competitively at times. So very curious to see if those ice in his veins translates to a stage like this. Deerjason, though, as we've been saying, no stranger to this situation. And even though he's coming in here with a mindset to where, this is secondary to school and the pursuit of a career for him, he's been very passionate about wanting to win and prove that he's really one of the best players in the region, period. He wants people to look at him and say, that's Deerjason. He's one of the best players in the world.
Absolutely, and Deerjason just nearly made it into the preliminaries. He finished 96th on the March ladder and had 10 total Hearthstone Championship Tour points, which he earned in the spring season, and had to win 7 games to get here to the championship. We see names like Fibonacci, who is such a ladder god in the North American region. Deerjason beat him 3-0, and then actually lost to Napoleon 2-3, but both players ended up making it here. His final win was to APX Void, who's made a name for himself certainly in 2016 season already.
Yeah, APX Void is another one of those players in the Americas region who in 2016 kind of had that breakout year. And I think that's really kind of the overall narrative of the Americas region is, we have a lot of players who are incredibly skilled but aren't necessarily getting the publicity that maybe some of their counterparts in Europe are getting. So going to be eager, Deerjason is to prove that he's one of the best. We see him close it out right there with the Leroy. And I want you to make note of his expression and how happy he is when he wins here, because later on you'll see him looking slightly less happy against Napoleon.
But yeah, definitely a player who is looking to repeat or do one better than his performance back in 2014. He actually lost to Firebat, the eventual world champion in that tournament to qualify for BlizzCon. So definitely gone through and up against tough competition before, and this will definitely be a tough competition for him here.
Yeah, no shame in losing to the eventual world champion. Deerjason just here to prove that, he can do one better and he can make it to the big stage. But let's go ahead and take a look at quarterfinal match number 2. It is going to be Dwayne taking on Napoleon. And these are two players. See, Dwayne's been very animated all weekend. He's a very talkative guy, and he likes to laugh. Overall, fun dude. And he's actually brought one of the more aggressive lineups, including taking Tempo Mage, which lately has been kind of one of those decks that's all over the ladder featuring Yogg Saron and all these cool bells and whistles that makes it fun. He's kind of just stripped it down to its more aggressive parts, and I've been playing the deck a lot. His version of Tempo Mage is incredibly fast. Curious to see what he can do with it. Napoleon was someone we actually saw in 2015 at the North American Qualifier Tournament. He made it all the way to the round of 40, was featured once on stream, unfortunately did lose that match and took it pretty emotionally. But he absolutely believes in the idea of meritocracy, right? Where if the best players are allowed to compete, the best players will win. Was not a fan of any sort of invitational system. Wanted to just come here and prove that he is one of the best, which he believes very much. So eager to see what he can pull off. Let's go ahead and take a look, though, at Dwayne's road to this event. Dwayne comes in here, Canadian, good friend of Talion, who we actually saw in the winter season. Corey, you want to walk us through his road here?
Absolutely. So Dwayne has a top 50 finish in February ladder. He finished number 23rd, 2 HCT points earned from online cups, which is no easy feat, and then 16 total Hearthstone Championship Tour points, which brought him into the preliminaries. Then had what I would say is one of the more difficult roads through the preliminaries to the championships. Had to beat It's Bolt in the first round, a former member of Hearthlytics, Demigod in the third round, Amnesiac in the fourth round, our winter champion from Americas last season. Rosty, of course, he actually lost the match to in the 5th round, but then picked it up again versus Nostum to make it to the championships.
Yeah, and his match against Nostum, which we see here, this is another instance where a player was down 2-0. Nostum came out to a quick lead with his very aggressive lineup, but Dwayne was able to keep his cool and battle back against Nostum's Token Druid deck, or Beast Druid deck, I believe it was kind of focused on then, and fight back to win the match 3-2. Again, demonstrating that he's a player who has what it takes to perform under the pressure in a high-stakes situation, even when his back against the wall.
Yeah, especially against a player of Nostum's caliber, who is another one of those 2016 breakout stories in the Americas region. So Dwayne has shown a lot of chops thus far, and he doesn't necessarily, get tilted or find himself struggling under pressure. And I think he comes in here with the right mentality, which is, this was something he was kind of taking more casually. And then in January, he actually just fully declared he was going to go for it. He was going to try to make that pro career. He was going to make that leap to being a competitive player. And obviously the results are showing thus far. So very excited to see what he is able to do. He will be taking on Napoleon, though. And, there was once a guy named Napoleon, I guess like semi-important in history, depending on your perspective.
You might remember him.
But there's a new conqueror here with the title Napoleon. And he's looking to come in here and just beat down everyone he sees. And we saw he did that pretty handily in the Americas Spring Preliminary.
Yeah, I mean, he fought through 5 straight opponents in the upper bracket to make his way here. Certainly no slouches either. Zalay was actually one of my picks to make it through to qualify for the championship. So, little dagger to my heart there, taking out my boy there. But, ended up ultimately beating Deerjason in the final match to qualify.
Absolutely. Napoleon coming in here, he's one of the younger guys, but what we see here was truly a mix of terrifying and beautiful, I would have to say. Napoleon, we're going to see, actually wins this match versus Deerjason, but he does it with some, I guess you could call it style, Rob.
Yeah, I have the unique privilege of being a community manager on the Hearthstone team, so I have access to certain historical documents that maybe people at home don't. I went through and I did the history. This is the most aggressive demonstration of bad manners in a competitive Hearthstone match ever. So Napoleon, regardless of what he accomplishes this weekend, has already taken the mantle of most bad manners player in the Americas region. A lot of style there. We saw Deerjason's face far less amused than it was earlier on in the pre-show. Very excited to see what Napoleon can do. And he comes in here as someone like George C., someone like Amnesiac, who straight up says, I am one of the best players here, and I'm going to prove it to you. And, having that Kanye West mentality, unfortunately, carries with it, some upsides and some downsides. If you come in and you don't perform super well, it's one of those things where your peers may point out, like, are you as good as you think you are? But if you come in, you're confident, you're going to win, and then you do it, what an absolute accolade to have. We saw it translate well for Amnesiac, less well for George C. Where will Napoleon land? That's the question. All right, go ahead and take a look at quarterfinal number 3. That's going to be Joster versus PNC. Cora, we will be casting this match later on. I'm very much looking forward to this. So is Joster, apparently.
They look happy. It's awesome to see these guys coming in here excited to play these games.
I mean, these players have all been together. Had a trip to Blizzard the other day. Been hanging out and getting to know one another. Here in the area around the studio. So a lot of them have gotten to know each other pretty well. Made some quick friends. These two guys definitely seem to be getting along.
Yeah, no, they've been hanging a fair bit, and PNC is Argentina's representative. Argentina being extremely consistent in making sure they have one player representing them. They are a very proud Hearthstone region, and they are a very proud region when it comes to competing in general. Very passionate, so exciting to see PNC make it this far. Joster, Joster doesn't really come from necessarily a super competitive background. He's someone who's coming in here. He's playing for fun. He certainly, Brian, to your point, kind of earlier on, he has missed his high school graduation to get to this point, but otherwise not taking it as a career choice necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, some players, have very different kind of roads here. Joster, clearly someone who took it seriously enough that he was willing to sacrifice his experience at his own graduation, but not necessarily someone who is looking to make it as their career. But if he is able to do well enough here that he moves on to BlizzCon, maybe he'll think that through a little bit.
Yeah, that's a big question. If you do that well, if you become the America Spring Champion, you end up going to the Hearthstone World Championship later on. Like, does that change? I mean, Cora, if you could just stop casting and win the Hearthstone World Championship, do you think that would suddenly make it a career for you?
I mean, absolutely. Firebat was a relatively young guy when he won the World Championships, and now, like you said before, Rob, he's making an esteemed casting career. He's an incredible competitor. He's on Cloud 9. So definitely, you may come into something like this thinking that, it's just a hobby, you're focusing on school, it's more casual. But if you come out of this the winner and you end up going to BlizzCon and even win the entire thing and you were the world champion, I have to admit you'd give that some thought to maybe making it a career.
Absolutely, and it's funny now that we think of 18 was when Firebat won as being young. In 2014, that was legitimate. But let's go ahead and take a look at Joster's road to the championships. Joster came in here as someone who, not a lot of people knew much about, but we see from his spring preliminary performance, he beat, is that Death?
Yeah, I mean, if you're able to beat Death on your road to the championship, I think that says something about your chances there.
And you know what? That's actually kind of funny because they're joking that PNC is sort of the Harry Potter to Joster's Ron Weasley. And in that case, Harry Potter was the one who actually beat Death. But this time, it's kind of Joster who's doing it. So going to be interesting to see which one comes out on top.
I understood that reference.
Congratulations, Rob. Let's go to Harry Potter land.
Aha, popular culture. But looking at his match to close it out, Saturos had a pretty rough outing there. Was kind of the gatekeeper for two separate opponents, and they ended up beating him. We saw how excited he was. And again, you may look at something as, it's not a livelihood, it's not necessarily a career at this point, but there is just a raw thrill that comes from winning and staking your claim to a, America Spring Championship or really any other championship level event. Joster's got a lot of heart. I'm very excited to see what he does, and I think he could be one of those players who's maybe, not necessarily looked at as like, oh, he's the guy who's going to make it through. I think he quietly could put on quite a performance, though.
Absolutely.
All right, and he will be taking on PNC, or Cora, I believe as you called him Harry Potter?
It's not me. It's his Argentinian fans. I mean, the glasses certainly do help, but that's an honor to be referred to as Harry Potter.
Absolutely. Again, the player from Argentina following in the footsteps of Snail from the winter season. He comes in here and he actually just won out completely in his spring preliminary matches. We see him taking on and beating a player of Chalky's caliber. So I think that immediately should tell you at home that this guy's got, what it takes.
Yeah, one thing that's notable to me about PNC's road, we actually had him on camera against Chalky in the very first round, and PNC, as we see here, defeated Chalky. And one of the key parts of that victory was the mid-range Hunter deck that he was playing in his lineup. And that was at a time at the preliminaries when mid-range Hunter wasn't a very popular deck. Now, if we actually look at the lineups from the players here, I believe 7 of the 8 players are playing Hunter. Back then, it was really, really uncommon to see. So So it'll be interesting to see if his kind of being a little bit ahead of the metagame ends up paying off here as well.
Yeah, that was an extremely dark time for Hearthstone. I remember at the beginning of the spring season, Rexar just on the side of a milk carton hadn't been seen in weeks. People were saying, oh, in Standard, he's not that good anymore. And then the 4 most magical words in Hearthstone were suddenly heard all throughout the tavern again. Let the hunt begin. People were enjoying their animal companions, their high mains, their second animal companions in Call of the Wild. So.
I was going to say, I was wondering if those 4 words were Call of the Wild.
I think those might be appropriate, too.
Those are 4 really great words, Brian, and I'm always super excited as a Hunter player when I get to say them to my opponent on turn 8, or turn 7 with the coin is even better. But I'm very excited to see this matchup because, as I said, I think Joster and PNC are 2 people, even in this top 8, who people aren't necessarily as familiar with. But I think they've actually, just after watching them this weekend, both have a lot of moxie. Is the word. A lot of moxie.
Good word.
Thanks. It's reading a dictionary lately. Let's go ahead and take a look at our 4th quarterfinal of the day. It's going to be Bradford Lee taking on Rosti. We see the fist bump there. These are 2 extremely high IQ players who the entire weekend have been talking about, there are correct ways to play the game, incorrect ways to play the game. Very strategically oriented individuals. So excited to see what happens. Cora, I know you and I both had the chance to talk to Bradford Lee over the weekend. Quite a character.
Absolutely. Bradford Lee comes into this as a guy who finished college, actually has a job or had a job in the environmental field. So he's a huge, huge environmental advocate. And after passing my environmental science class last term with flying colors,
wow.
I felt like Bradford Lee and I could sort of connect on that topic. No, but he's really one of the more level-headed guys. He's a streamer, and he practice partners with, several very prominent ladder players and tournament players. So really someone coming in who people may not know a lot about him, but he's definitely, no stranger to competition.
Yeah, we really didn't know much about Rosti either coming into the preliminary, but he put on a really impressive showing there. One thing that stood out to me, of course, was the fact that he was playing Dragon Warrior in that tournament.
That took us 30 seconds to get there, Brian.
Well, even outside of the fact that, dragons are just inherently awesome,
sure.
and putting dragons in your deck just makes it cooler, he was able to put up on an incredible performance there, and the deck actually that he played there has been adopted by several other players in this event as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic changes over the course of this event.
Yeah, I know you were not a big fan of the term Tempo Warrior. You very vocally lamented the title, but I'm sure Dragon Warrior sits just a little bit better with you.
That's a perfect name. Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take a look at Bradford Lee's road to this point, however. Bradford Lee coming in as someone who, at one point... yeah, like I said, he's quite a character, that Bradford Lee. He unfortunately was sent to the lower bracket by Amnesiac, which you can't feel too bad about, pretty early on in the preliminaries. But he has since rallied and done a great job taking out some of the game's most well-known players in the Americas region. Again, Legolas with a capital S.
That guy. We better be seeing more of him.
Yeah, and he took out other notable names. Shimona Hay, Demigod, Gallon 213 is another player who quietly performs very consistently across Hearthstone. So for Bradford Lee, the name of the game was kind of battling back, and he did it with flying colors.
Absolutely. Reno Lock, which we see here, did win him the match against Gallon 213, but as we saw last week in the Asia Pacific Championships, Reno Lock not performing too well, so we're actually seeing more Zoo this week, and actually Bradford Lee does not even have a Warlock in his picks.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think maybe even among all of the championships, pretty much everyone brought Warlock, and Bradford Lee chose to go against the grain there. It felt like Warlock decks were likely to be targeted in many players' lineups because they had been so common in all of the championship events, and it was one of the very few players to exclude it in all of the championships. Yeah,
he was very vocal about it when we went to our dinner with the players. We didn't even necessarily have to dig around. He was just very quickly like, I didn't bring Warlock, which, to me, when you're assembling the lineup, we've seen players so consistently say, like, yeah, you start out with something like Shaman, Warlock, Warrior, and you kind of build around that, but he just didn't feel like he needs it. On top of that very, I guess, direct approach to how he builds his rosters, talking so much about conservation efforts and what he wants to do in terms of after this, traveling, going out, kind of getting back to nature. I'm very excited to see what this guy is capable of and if that roster, necessarily even works out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's. We were joking that he's kind of the living embodiment of Malfurion. He must protect the wild. So we'll see how that goes for him in this tournament.
Yeah, I don't know how people at home feel about role playing. I'm a big fan of it, so I'm
oh
glad
dear,
to
we're
see.
going down that road.
I mean, yeah, we better stop for people at home fight us. But yeah, for him, it's kind of one of those things where he's actually gotten into streaming as well. So this was something that, was originally a hobby, was something he just kind of came in and he was doing, again, because it was easy to play on the go. Hearthstone being, playable on phones, tablets. He had the flexibility to do that while he was traveling, but has translated that into a streaming career as well. So excited to see if he can use this as a platform to bigger and better things. Rosty's road to the championships, and we talked about it was an incredibly impressive performance at the America's Spring Preliminary. Came in, brought that Dragon Warrior. He's very much of the mind that when it comes to Hearthstone, there's really a right and a wrong way to play it. And if you play it the wrong way, it's not because you're necessarily appealing to your quotation marks play style. It's just because you haven't necessarily done the research. You don't understand the matchups. And again, that kind of bold mentality translates really well when you go 5-0 in the preliminary.
Yeah, and really important to note, Rosty actually earned 10 of his Hearthstone Championship Tour points from online cups. So whereas other players might have more experience with the ladder grind and finishing in High Legend ladder, Rosty has more experience with those that practice in online tournaments and actually playing against other people in tournament formats. So it's going to be interesting to see if that's going to give him an edge here.
Yeah, it's worth noting that many players who you're seeing come through to the preliminaries and onto the championships who have that much of a background in tournament play do tend to have a bit of an edge because they're more used to playing in an environment that involves bans and likely more used to playing in environments that may have some more dynamic rule sets like best of 7, which isn't something that many players really are terribly familiar with.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I think you tweak your roster as well with more tech cards, kind of have a more holistic understanding of what you're expecting to see. So Rosty, I think on paper, has to be one of the favorites just in terms of his sheer understanding of the game and how he approaches it. And this is a great way to segue into our predictions. Brian, you are thus far the only caster to correctly predict Tice. It was a vanilla pick, but it played off.
A vanilla pick? I picked the best player. There we go.
An intelligent
All right, Brian,
pick, I guess.
That's reasonable. I'm actually a little concerned to ask because I'm pretty sure I know the answer based on this point. Who are you picking?
Well, my pick for this is based both on sort of my heart,
sure,
as well as just looking at the players' lineups, as well as having at least had a chance to talk to some of the players. And the player who said it the most to me was definitely Rosty. Not only is he playing Dragon Warrior, which of course I have a soft spot for,
sure,
but he really has carried himself and been able to talk through sort of his philosophy and theory behind the game extremely well in a very impressive way. That really was kind of reminiscent of Firebat back in 2014. So definitely, I think, the player to look out for in this tournament.
High praise, great skill, dragons. I mean, I think that's pretty much all you need. Oh, Brian, no, we can't. We can't do that. We can't roleplay.
Oh, I can.
All right, well, I didn't have a dragon costume, so we can just go find it. Cora, it's time to get your predictions. You probably don't want to learn all these things. Cora, who did you pick?
All right. So as much as I do enjoy dragons and Brian's impersonations of them, I do have to say that I prefer the wild. And I'm going to have to go with Bradford Lee on this one, not just because he is an eco-friendly nature enthusiast, but because he is practice partners with a former teammate of mine, Racy591, who has a lot of prior card game experience and is a really impressive ladder and tournament player. So if Racy taught Bradford Lee anything, then I'm going to have to say that Bradford Lee has a great chance at taking the championship home.
Yeah, I knew what Brian's pick was going to be, but I felt almost positive you were going to go with Dwayne. I know you were high on that tempo mage.
I was flip-flopping back and forth. I really do like the tempo mage, and Dwayne, I had some great conversations with him, but at the end of the day, I have to trust my friends.
Yeah, you kind of flip-flopped last week, too. You had Handsome Guy picked originally, and then on day 2,
yeah, last week I made some
mistakes.
mistakes. Let's hope I didn't do it this week, too.
Absolutely. All right, for my pick, I'm going to continue in my long-standing tradition of having the least sensical reason to pick players. I'm going to go ahead and go with Cydonia. So I was kind of a Guitar Hero god in my early 20s, and Cydonia was kind enough to confirm that he did, in fact, take his name from the Muse song Knights of Cydonia, which played Guitar Hero. My heart goes out to you. That was a really hard one to play on hard, but I did it. So I'm picking Cydonia.
Proud of you.
That's why he's going to take it all. Curious who you guys at home have winning it, though. Feel free to tweet at PlayHearthstone. Tweet any of us over the weekend. Use the hashtag HCT. We will be responding to tweets and filling up your timeline with all kinds of witty, or in my case, less witty opinions about the matches. Definitely want to hear who you guys have winning it. That is going to do it for us from the pre-show desk. It is time to begin the America's Spring Championship.
After 3 months of competition, the America's Spring season now comes to an epic conclusion. We've seen the world's top Hearthstone players compete with strategy and wit as competitors rise and fall in emotional victories. Now it's time to crown a new champion. 8 players from across the Americas have battled to earn their chance at glory and a share of the $100,000 prize pool. Pull up a chair and catch all the action. The Hearthstone Americas Spring Championship begins right now.
Greetings from the fireside and welcome one and all to the Spring Championship for the Americas region of 2016. My name is Frodan, and this weekend we will crown not only a champion for the region, but also give them a ticket to the Hearthstone World Championship happening at BlizzCon later this year. Join with me on stage, I have the 8 quarterfinalists hailing from all corners of the region. Let's go ahead and introduce them as we get to know them for our 4 matches from today. Starting with, on the far right side, we have our last quarterfinal match. We have Bradford Lee up against Rosti. Sick poses, man. Our third match of the day, we have a Latin America representative, PNC, up against Joster. To my far left, we have our second match of the day. We have Napoleon up against Dwayne from Canada. Our first match of the day also will be featuring another Canadian. It's Cydonia, Rob's pick, up against Deerjason, a repeat finalist for the Americas region. And with that, we have our 8 quarterfinalists. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. Please exit right to the stage as we get ready for our first match between our first 2 contestants. I'm going to ask a quick question. First, I want to ask you, Deerjason, you're back here on the Americas stage again. What's been changed since you were 14 2 years ago, coming back to this stage? What's been different this time around?
Well, this time with the introduction of Standard, there's more variety of decks possible in the metagame instead of like a random Dr. Boom deck part of the Shredder. So with the more decks viable, though, I had to do way more testing than before, so I'll be more prepared this time.
All right, that's a fantastic answer. Cydonia, it's your first time on the big stage. You're also hailing from French Canada that not many people know too much about. Do you feel ready and prepared to take this tournament?
Yeah, I'm super ready. I tested a lot, and I'm really confident in my decks for this tournament.
All right, well, enough said. Congratulations on making it this far, but the winner will go on. Shake hands as we get ready for our first match of the Spring Championship. Hope you guys are ready. Take a look at what these guys have to say about each other as we kick off the Americas Spring Championship. Deerjason, a competitor for years getting just short of BlizzCon, has his first obstacle in the newcomer perfectionist, Cydonia.
I really respect Cydonia. He is a really great player, but he is my first step in making it to BlizzCon, and I am prepared to not waste that one chance I have.
The one thing that everyone is telling about this guy is that he likes to emote a lot and try to get in his opponent's head, but I don't think anyone is going to get in my head during a Hearthstone tournament.
I will use my years of tournament experience in order to help me capitalize on every single good fortune I have.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Caster Desk. I am Raven and joined for this first game of the day by Brian Kibler, the one and only dragon impersonator and master himself.
Yeah, I think I could have done a little bit of a roar, better roar if I didn't have a bit of a cold right now.
Okay.
But you know, we'll have to
We've
breathe
got time.
some fire later.
We've got a couple of days. We're going to be okay. But we do have the first game coming up, which is going to be Cydonia versus Deerjason. We've just heard from those guys, and to be honest, Deerjason's sheer determination is pretty impressive. He's like, you know, I've been in a similar spot before. I've got a little bit further this time, and I'm going to take it and, you know, really cash in on that opportunity.
Yeah, you know, a player who has been so close in the past. He literally was one game away from making it to the World Champions at BlizzCon. Was stopped there by Firebat. Definitely looking to make it farther this time. So
yeah, and we are going into the first game, which is going to be Deerjason's Hunter versus Cydonia's Shaman.
Yeah, and these players, from a class perspective, have identical lineups, and they actually had identical bans. Both players chose to ban one another's Warlock deck. There is some interesting differences between their decks, however. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the 2 Druid decks in particular.
Yeah, the 2 Druid decks are going to be one playing Yogg and one playing Cthulhu, so a real battle of the old gods. But at the moment, this is one of the more common decks we see in Cydonia's Shaman. The aggressive list, it's one almost I think everyone's bringing, you know, in one form or another at least, into the tournament. And it's got a pretty good matchup versus most classes. But Hunter I think can struggle a lot of the time if they don't play really well on curve and get those like good taunts to just slow the Shaman down.
Yeah, the key cards for the Hunter in this matchup are some of the early removal, and then Houndmaster is a very big one. Deerjason has a pretty decent hand here. You know, Quick Shot can be solid to help remove early things like Tunnel Trog. Does choose to throw back the Houndmaster since he doesn't actually have any beasts that he can use to boost with it, and it's a really poor card on its own.
Yeah, when you have to wait till turn 4 just to play it down, there's no beast guaranteed. It's definitely not one to keep. But Deerjason does have a lot of removals, so he does have answers up until he can really stack into those, high impact turns later on in the game. But at the moment, Cydonia is forced to play the Abusive Sergeant, not the one drop he was looking for. You definitely want to start with those Trogs and Totem Golem. And although Cydonia does have a 1 and 2 drop, and 2/3 drops, he's got a really good curve, but overall not quite the opening he would have wanted, and it is answered by a quick shot pretty quickly from Deerjason.
Yeah, I mean, from Cydonia's perspective, as long as his opponent is using removal, it doesn't really matter what he played in turn 1. So the more important thing is the fact that he is absorbing his opponent's removal and actually using his mana profitably. Here he actually has an interesting decision. He can coin into the Totemic, which looks like is what he is going to choose to do. And what is it? It is a Stoneclaw, so not one of the powerhouse totems, but definitely solid because it does at least protect the Totemic from the possible Eaglehorn buff.
Yeah, and exactly. Going to turn 3, even like a Huffer from the Animal Companion play. There's a lot of cards that the taunt actually does block, and I really like the play from Cydonia as Flame Juggler on 2 is not really that impactful, whereas getting a Tuskar Totemic, if it came out like a Totem Golem or something, then that's huge because then it can flow straight into the Feral Spirit if required.
This is actually an interesting spot for Cydonia here. He has a number of different options. One of the things about playing a deck that has a lot of cheap cards is that you will often have the ability to potentially play multiple cards in a single turn. And while some players will say, "Oh, aggressive decks, they're straightforward to play," they do give you lots of options over the course of however few turns the games might last. Here, Cydonia has the Flame Juggler, which I think could give him the best possible outcome. Flame Juggler, if it does hit Leok, he has the Rock Biter to kill Leok, leave himself with a pretty strong board. He can play Feral Spirits, which is the sort of more conservative play. That does overload him, and he doesn't really have anything he can do next turn other than the Flame Juggler itself. But he does go ahead and play the Spirits, and now Deerjason has a reasonable opportunity himself here. It's important to note, because the players do have access to each other's deck list, Cydonia knows that Deerjason only has a single copy of Unleash the Hounds, which would be a very scary card with that Leok on the opposing side of the board. So kind of playing the odds here, thinking it's because you only have one, probably not in your hand at this stage.
Yeah, exactly. Because if he went with the Flame Juggler, it could have been great if it hit the Leok. But if it didn't, it would turn into quite a mediocre turn. Whereas he's gone for the Feral Spirit, just to go wide on the board and just continue with the curve. But it would have been punished by Unleash, but as quite rightly, if your opponent's only playing one, you don't put them on it this early in the game. So we are going to see Eagle on both, clarify the Spirits. The Leok just cleans up that totem from earlier on and just going to hand over the initiative to Cydonia.
Yeah, and Cydonia has the option of basically totem this turn. He could use Rockbiter on his Wolf to take out the Leok. He could also play the Flame Juggler, maybe trade the Totemic in. One interesting note is the fact that his opponent has the bow already in play, that having some damage on that Wolf isn't necessarily that big of a deal because it's likely to die anyway against that. Is just going to go ahead and play the Flame Juggler, see where it lands.
Does go on the Leok, so he can use the Tuskar to actually kill the Leok if desired. And he did note as well is there probably isn't a Houndmaster in hand because obviously Deerjason went for the bow.
And there's a Houndmaster.
And speaking of Houndmaster, he does appear as always when his name is called out. But because he played the bow, it means that your opponent probably doesn't have the Houndmaster available, so pretty safe. Could have chosen to leave it up, but he did go with the clear. And another Leok on the board. Actually, never Huffer.
And this is potentially a really critical turn. Cydonia has Doomhammer. He could play Doomhammer and just kill the Leok by attacking it twice. That would prevent a Houndmaster from coming down and turning it into a giant taunt. He could just choose to go face. That could cause problems if Houndmaster does come down. But no matter what he does with Doomhammer, if he plays it, it will cause problems because Harrison Jones is waiting in Deerjason's hand.
Yeah, this is huge, and this is one of the sort of problems of knowing your opponent's deck list. If you know they're playing Harrison, then if there is a Harrison straight after Doomhammer, that's a nightmare, because looking at Cydonia's hand, he actually has the damage output to actually just win the game. He could just go Doomhammer face, he has Lava Burst and a hit if he needs to clear through a Houndmaster, and then just carry on. Then he has Rock Biter and Argent Horse Rider as well, so he has a lot of damage over X amount of turns to actually just finish the game straight up, and he does go for the Doomhammer.
Yeah, and I expect we do see him clear out the Leok, which would have, with the Houndmaster, been able to stop any future Doomhammer damage, but Harrison Jones also stops future Doomhammer damage and draws Deerjason 6 cards, so an absolutely huge swing turn for the young American player.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, in Hunter specifically, not a class known for its card drawing. If you can draw cards somehow in Hunter, you feel in a pretty good position. And with pretty much a full hand here for Deerjason, he has all the options in the world available to him now. And I feel like Cydonia is in a really rough spot.
Yeah, Cydonia, he has not been able to get in a ton of damage. He did use significant resources killing Deerjason's minions to prevent Houndmaster from coming down, and thus doesn't really even have the backdoor burn draw. You know, if Deerjason were at, say, 10 here, okay, maybe I pick up another Lava Burst. Maybe I can close out the game that way. But Deerjason is at 21, and that's a tough number to add up to with the few cards Cydonia has in his hand.
Yeah, exactly, and especially because we're edging towards the real danger turns. Like, once Call the Wild comes out on 8th against Shaman, you're going to face some problems, like you said, if you can't just burn them down. Looks like Finley's going to come down, probably edging towards Hunter Hero Power to try and close the game out. He does have 10 damage in hand from Lava Burst, the Argent Horse Rider, and the Rock Biter, so he can weave in a lot of damage, and he's probably just relying on getting that extra damage through draws to finish the game.
Yeah, he specifically, Cydonia is using his minion-based damage before anything else, because if a Houndmaster does come down, that would prevent him from being able to get damage through with something like the Argent Horse Rider, but it seems like it's very unlikely to be enough. Deerjason is able to answer the Horse Rider with a Kodo. Cydonia has a few things that can get a little bit of damage in his hand, but he's still facing 19 life from Deerjason, and Call of the Wild's going to come down next turn.
Yeah, and Flame Tongue as well is not the card you want to draw when you have 0 board to really cash in on it.
I think it may even be reasonable for Cydonia to just Rock Biter face right now.
Just getting the damage,
right, because he knows that there's going to be a Call of the Wild or Houndmaster coming down next turn. And that's exactly what Cydonia does.
And he's never using that Rock Biter to trade at this point. He's too far behind on the board. He cannot recover the board in any way. So he's just going to get the damage in and hope that's going to be enough.
And while it's unlikely to be enough, I really like that play from Cydonia. That's a really heads-up play, recognizing that this is my last window to deal damage with this card, and the only way I'm going to win this game is by burning my opponent out.
Yeah, and this is looking pretty grim with 2 kill commands, a bow, a Houndmaster, whatever Deerjason wants to do. This is looking pretty rough for Cydonia at the moment.
The crazy thing is, with that Lightning Bolt draw, Lightning Bolt Lava Burst Hero Power, he's just 4 damage off killing Deerjason, despite everything that happened.
Yeah, I mean, like, the difference between having Harrison on the first swing of Doomhammer and say if you drew into it for the second swing, that would have made a huge difference to this game. And just having it available to him on the dot for Doomhammer straight away was huge.
And I wonder how this might have played out if Deerjason, or rather if Cydonia had chosen to attack face with the Doomhammer rather than killing the Leok. It would have created the window for the Houndmaster to come down. Still have gotten Harrison. Unclear how that would have played out, but in the end, the first game does go to Deerjason on the back of that back-breaking Harrison Jones.
Yeah, it's a really huge swing for him there, and there's just nothing Cydonia could do to come back, even though he got really close. But speaking of Cydonia, we had a chance to sit down with him and just get to know him just a little bit better.
So yeah, I'm really a perfectionist. When I play a game, I always try to play like perfectly. I just like the challenge. I like to feel that I'm always learning new things. I've never been a fan of tic-tac-toe because you play 2 games and you already know how to play perfectly. A lot of times I will play fun games with friends and I have to tone down that side because they don't care if you play perfectly, they just want to have fun. I would say there's like a few players who are closer to perfect, and even sometimes I will think I will have played perfectly, but someone who was watching me said, oh, that turn you should have done that other play, and then I can consider it, and then we can discuss it. You cannot play like every single game you play perfectly because you will get some decisions that it will be like too difficult to calculate. So maybe someday a machine will do it, but I don't think a person can possibly do it.
Cydonia the perfectionist. He's really focused on just playing as well as possible every single turn. And what I think is more important is he's willing to get the feedback from other players and then learn from that. You know, completely happy to say he doesn't know everything. Any feedback, I'll work on it, see what's the best, and then continue from there.
Yeah, there are a lot of players out there who really feel like they have everything figured out. They're like, oh, you know, I know what to do in all these situations. It's pretty straightforward. Those players tend not to be the best players, interestingly enough. And Cydonia is a player who recognizes that even at the level he's already at, he still can have a lot to learn.
Yeah, and we are going into the second game. Deerjason is 1-0 up. He is going to play Shaman against Cydonia's. This is going to be Cthulhu Druid.
Yeah, Cthulhu Druid is really interesting because it's a deck, much like Mid-Range Hunter, that kind of wasn't part of the metagame in a meaningful sense back during the preliminaries, and really even back during many of the championships that we've had so far already in the spring season. But it's a very popular deck here this weekend.
Yeah, it's a deck that I think a lot of people have been tearing up the ladder with. It's super powerful, and you can hit the point because Druid has so many powerful drops from like 5 onwards. They have some huge taunts. You can deal with early pressure a lot of the time, and then just close the game out late game because your opponent just can't get to you through all the taunts. You have Twin Emperors, as well as Druids of the Claw, Ancient of War potentially, and just so on. It just gets too much, and then you can just end the game.
Yeah, one interesting thing that we've seen at this event, given the general metagame, given the lineups, you know, we see that each of these players banned one another's Warlock decks. Warlock wasn't really a class we saw banned a ton in the previous championships. We saw Warrior get banned a lot, and we saw Shaman get banned.
Yeah.
And it's interesting with the rise of Druid's popularity in this tournament. It's now shifted the metagame slightly in terms of what bans look like, which likely also changes the way players build their decks. So the layers of strategy that exist, given the existence of a ban and how that has worked out in this environment, is really interesting.
Yeah, and we are going to start the game. It's looking pretty okay for Jason. He does have the 2 Totem Golem, Tuskar Totemic, and Feral Spirit. So the key here is he has all the early minion pressure, and then he can move on to the spell pressure later on to get through the taunts that are no doubt going to come down from Cydonia.
Yeah, and Deerjason with the pair of Totem Golems, but Cydonia has a great start of his own. The coin into Wild Growth allowed him to play this 3-drop, and now he actually can choose to attack his Twilight Elder into one of the Totem Golems, then finish off both of them with Swipe this turn.
Yep.
So that is a huge
And the Elder
possible
still
swing.
survives.
Yeah, and the Elder will be alive. So, you know, while Deerjason had one of the strongest openings from Shaman, you know, obviously could have been better if he had a Tunnel Trog opening things up. Cydonia's opening with his Druid deck is also very, very strong.
Yeah, and keeping this Elder alive is really important because the key number you want to hit in any Cthulhu deck is 10. And he's already on 8, so now if he plays any of the other Cthulhu minions in his deck, they will automatically go to 10, even if the Elder dies this turn. So it means all of his other cards, like Twin Emperor that we can see in hand, are going to be effective.
Well, the Elder's actually just to 8 right now. It's the 1 per turn. So
Yeah, so if he plays another cultist, he only needs to play 1
I
more.
missed that part.
Yeah.
But
I'll
no,
let you off with that one, Kibler, don't worry.
Cydonia does have the Dark Arakoa in his hand, which does give the additional boost here. It actually gives +3/+3. It's the weird, it's sort of the odd one out there. But Vandal Staghelm, definitely a very scary card out of any Druid deck these days, really. Comes down, and Deerjason now.
This is a tough call. I was going to say Deerjason has to make the call as to whether deal with Vandal or just continue to develop the board. But a lot of the time, Vandal is like a lot of these key legendaries, similar to Emperor.
Yeah.
The turn you ignore him is the turn you just lose the game.
Yeah, the cards that Cydonia has for his Fandral, he has Living Roots, Raven Idol, Nourish even, Druid of the Claw, all of them huge swings. But speaking of big swings, a 5/7 taunt really puts a huge damper on the aggressive opening of this Shaman deck. Most of the Shaman decks, I actually believe all of the Shaman decks in this event are aggressive versions, not the mid-range versions that tend to play Hex, which have great answers to things like Dark Arakoa. But in this instance, definitely a tough card for Deerjason to deal with. Does have a 7/7, which matches up well, but is now still just missing an attack. He's kind of behind. So Cydonia in quite a strong spot here.
Yeah, we are going to see the Raven Idol come down. Definitely one of my favorite cards. I think it's named one of the best, at least. So that's a bonus. But the Mark of the Wild, Soul Forest, and Moonfire. So
interesting lineup here. Does choose to take Mark of Nature. That could allow him to either keep a minion out of range of being killed or keep a minion alive, either of which is quite strong. So Deerjason going to go ahead and Feral Spirits into Lightning Bolt into Lava Shock. So able to clear off the big taunt and get 7 damage to the face. And thanks to the Feral Spirits is going to be able to protect his 7/7 from that Sylvanas as well.
Yeah, that was really key, being able to clear off the taunt without using the Flame Wreath, because it means you just get 7 into face, and suddenly Cydonia's starting to get to the health where just some spells are going to be pretty useful to end the game. But we already have seen Lava Burst, Lightning Bolt, Lava Shock, so we've seen a lot of just spell damage straight from hand anyway. So Cydonia's still not, not completely in trouble at the moment.
Yeah, one thing that's worth noting about the Cthulhu Druid decks, compared to, say, the mid-range Druid decks in previous iterations of Hearthstone prior to Standard, doesn't have Ancient of Lore. The change to Ancient of Lore with the Standard shift means that you don't really tend to see it in most decks, so the life gain element is no longer really there. And while token decks may have Feral Rage, the decks that have more, Violet Teacher, those sort of things, that isn't a card that tends to show up in the Cthulhu Druids. So when you take damage, you don't have much in the way of to regain your health.
Yeah, but there's a Flame Tongue Totem from the Tuskarr Totemic, so one of the pretty good rolls there. It's not going to help too much in clearing up this both of the Emperors at the moment.
It's actually kind of awkward, because now it means that Sylvanas can trade into the 4/3. Though he actually has the ability to trade into to kill that with the Emperor, and then just kill the 7 attack guy to begin with. So
the bonus here is Deerjason is actually able to flood the board quite heavily, so the odds on Sylvanas stealing something, not too impactful.
Yeah, he's a couple of totems and the Flame Juggler, so not really going to be able to set up the guaranteed steal of something valuable. Though
he can now use the Disciple to kill off the Wrath of Air totem.
He could even use Bran plus Disciple to kill off something larger if he so chose.
Now you just
definitely
crazy talk.
A lot of options for Cydonia this turn. He unfortunately can't Bran Disciple kill 2 things.
That would just
it only double targets the one thing, but
yeah, there is what's good for Cydonia is, as you mentioned about Ancient of Lore, there is the Nourishing Hand, which means he has the ability to refill his hand, so he can draw cards, and not that he needs them quite at the moment, and he does have Harrison as well, so as soon as a Doomhammer comes out, he can answer that and also refill. And Deerjason's looking a little bit low on the card count, but looking pretty good on the board at the moment, but we'll have to see what this Sylvanas ends up stealing.
He's just going to go ahead and fire off the Sylvanas immediately. I think that the plan here from Cydonia is try and see if I can steal the best thing, and then if I can't, I'll go ahead and use Bran plus the Disciple to go ahead and kill the Flame Wreath Faceless, get it off the board.
Yeah.
So giving himself an opportunity to get a great outcome, and now with the Mark of Nature, he's able to put up a very big wall of taunts as well.
Yeah, and this is what Cthulhu Druid does. It takes a bit of a beating a lot of the time early on against the more aggressive decks, but now you just put up a huge wall. I mean, let's be honest, how is Deerjason going to burst through this? And because Cydonia's on 18, there's not even a lot of spells he's got left that he's going to push that kind of damage, as we've already seen at least 1 Lava Burst and 1 Lightning Bolt so far.
Yeah, Deerjason definitely looking like things are pretty grim right now. And it's not like he even has that much time. Yes, he could play, say, Sir Finley, find Steady Shot or Life Tap, but Cydonia has a huge board presence himself. When you're playing the Cthulhu Druid deck, you are generating not just taunts that prevent your opponent from killing you, but also just big minions.
Yeah.
And that is not what Deerjason wanted to get going into a board full of giant taunts. Kind of hard to attack into.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit rough. Maybe just hoping for a Rock Fighter or something, so he could just push that extra bit of damage, but he just has to just go in on this brand, put 1 damage on, and hope it's going to start to stack up over a few turns.
Maybe he's just maybe he just has the soul read that Cydonia has Harrison, and he just wants to
bait the Harrison
dagger up. So maybe he'll play as Harrison.
Is there is there a world in which Cydonia plays Harrison on a 1 durability dagger in this matchup? I don't know.
There is a world. I don't think it's this one. But yeah, Cydonia with the double draw from Azure Drake, thanks to Bran Bronzebeard. Going to go ahead and Raven Idol as well. Mark of the Wild can make even more taunts.
Why not at this point?
He even has a board of so many minions that Soul of the Forest has to be really attractive as well.
I don't know if his minions will die when he trades, though. That's the problem. Like, the minions are so much bigger than Deerjason. They won't actually die. So the death rattle effect won't go off too often.
He does go ahead and take Mark of the Wild. Going to continue to build a wall of taunts here. Disciple of Cthulhu doubles up, making Cthulhu huge, killing poor Sir Finley.
Yeah, this is one of the differences as well with the Cthulhu Druid versus some other Cthulhu decks. Druid's normally the one that can stack Cthulhu highest because they can play the most actual buff Cthulhu cards.
They even have the +3/+3 from Dark
Yeah,
Arcana.
and there we go. With the Ardent Squire draw, it's not going to be enough for Deerjason, and Cydonia will even up the match at 1-1.
And that was definitely a great display of the power of Cthulhu Druid, really showing why it is a popular pick among players at this championship.
Yep, so with Deerjason just losing that matchup, even at 1-1 for Cydonia, we actually got to take a quick look at Deerjason's actual long road through to the Spring Championship.
My first tournament was when I faced Firebat in the finals. I actually beat him, but the second tournament I played, I also faced Firebat in the finals, but this time I didn't get so lucky, and Firebat managed to get his revenge on me. My next big break was when I qualified for the America's 2014 Championship qualifiers. I made one game away from BlizzCon. In the 2015 Last Chance qualifiers, I also fell just short. I made it to the round of 32 and was one match away from qualifying for another qualifier. Being so close but yet so far is a really frustrating experience, but yet I didn't give up. I kept trying every single year. In 2016, I had my biggest break yet. Right here, right now, I made it to top 8 America's Spring Championship.
Mostly expressionless, but now he is relieved.
I believe that if you try hard enough, you will have that one time where you achieve something great. It might be in 1 year, it might be in 2 years, it even might be in 5 years. But if you keep trying and never give up, you will have that one breakthrough which will change your entire life.
Deerjason, one of the most inspirational characters I've ever met.
It's crazy to think that he's just 16 years old. That his first big break was 2014, where he narrowly missed the World Championship at just 14 years old. He's like, oh, you just take however many years it takes, you'll get there.
Yeah, and it's just a display of raw willpower and determination. He's like, you know what, I'm going to make it. It's just a matter of time. And I feel that's correct. With all his performances he's had, we saw him there discussing, he got into multiple finals against Firebat in different tournaments. He's just waiting for that one chance to just, make it big and make the splash.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I think is really at the core of the Hearthstone Championship Tour. It gives players an opportunity, no matter what their background, no matter what previous experience they may have, gives them an opportunity to have that breakout performance. And this could be it for Deerjason or for Cydonia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the opportunity's up for grabs for all these players, and we are going into the third match, and it's going to be Deerjason's Warrior versus Cydonia's Hunter.
This is a matchup that is very, very difficult for the Warrior, generally speaking. The Hunter deck tends to play a stronger tempo game. It's able to get on the board, get ahead. Warrior plays very well if it has time, because it can use cards like Varian Rin we see in Deerjason's hand, as well as Battle Rage to generate a very large resource advantage. But the power of cards like Houndmaster and Savannah Highmane in Cydonia's hand, as well as Call of the Wild, make it very difficult for the Warrior deck to actually get that time.
Yeah, I think the Warrior really has to be able to keep up or stay on top of the early Hunter turns to not let them snowball out of control. But Deerjason's opening hand is pretty nice. We've got the Fire War Axe. That's the one you're always after in this matchup.
War Axe is very crucial. We do see Cydonia has a handful of minions that die to Fire War Axe, but also the Frothing Berserker.
Yep.
A big thing about Frothing Berserker is that it does put your opponent on a very fast clock. Every time minions take damage, the Berserker gets bigger, and you just get to keep cracking in for more and more damage over time, which is very important at closing out the window the Hunter has to find its power cards like Call of the Wild.
Yeah, and that Joust was actually very, very important. We saw the Kodo there, and that means that Deerjason will know there's a lot of minions in his deck that are susceptible to Kodo to just clear off. And he will know there's one available. Instead of saying, oh, how worth is it to try and play around it maybe on turn 5? Now he's like, no, I know it's in the hand, so now I can alter my play to actually deal with it.
It's kind of funny because, that's a really big joust too. We see
Deerjason not too happy about that.
Clear response from Deerjason there. So whenever you win the joust with King's Elec, it always is a very powerful effect. But in particular, when you're able to find powerful cards like the Houndmaster here. But now, as we were just saying, this is a very key opportunity for Deerjason. He's able to get both those minions cleared off, get a tempo advantage because of the War Axe, able to kill minions over 2 turns, and develop a big threat of his own with the Frothing Berserker here. And none of the minions that Cydonia has really match up terribly well against Frothing Berserker.
Yeah, he's probably pretty glad the War Axe was used, though, because if, say, War Axe, like a second charge of War Axe and Ghoul came down this turn, suddenly that Frothing's hitting pretty hard. But he does have to just go with the Wolf. There's not much else to do on that turn. He just has to try and curve out and stay on top of this. But the Frothing Berserker definitely going to prove some trouble. But Deerjason pretty much can't play the Bloodhoof because it's just going to get killed by the Kodo, and he knows that's going to happen 100% of the time in this specific match.
Yeah, so here, Deerjason can play the second Frothing, attack into the Infected Wolf. And that's key for a number of reasons. One, he doesn't want his opponent to be able to get a big minion with the Houndmaster he knows. And 2, he doesn't want his opponent to be able to Stampede and Kodo on the Frothing Berserker.
I actually really like this. Coin into Battle Rage. It's only for 2, but look at his hand. Like, double execute a Bloodhoof he can't really play quite yet because he knows it'll just die. And then Grom. So he just really needs to cycle in some more answers. Probably looking for a Ghoul, maybe another War Axe to just try and keep on top of this.
And this is a situation where, because of the way that Deerjason has maneuvered this, he kind of forces Cydonia to play a little bit reactively this turn. He does have that Frothing Berserker in play, which, as we mentioned, can be a huge, huge threat if it's allowed to grow out of control. Cydonia can choose to answer it with his kill command, but doesn't have the ability to actually develop anything more to his own board if he does so.
Yeah, he can play the Toad. He has the
he
Toad available, so he can.
Toad was hiding in the corner there.
So
he has such a huge hand thanks to those
Yeah,
jabs.
it's crazy. So luckily for Cydonia, he can make a pretty decent turn, but as you said, it is not as optimal as you'd like because you do want to continue, just dropping the bigger minions as the time goes on as the Hunter.
Deerjason here picks up a Blood to Ichor. That can allow him to play his Bloodhoof Brave and ensure that it doesn't die to the Kodo. And he's just seen a kill command. So it means that the chances that Cydonia has some way to remove it easily are fairly low. He does choose to just go ahead and drop Monkey plus Armorsmith on this board.
Yeah, I think he's just going to use this to just buy some time, as a lot of the time you have to kill the Monkey first and then get to the Armorsmith, so it's going to soak up some damage and increase the armor on Deerjason, especially with that Toad Death Rattle to prop 1 additional damage. It's 1 additional armor most of the time.
But here Cydonia has the power card of Hunters against Warriors with Savannah Highmane in his hand, which I have to imagine we'll see come down pretty much immediately. So difficult for Warriors to deal with.
Yeah, he has enough room to as well. There's only an Armorsmith on the board after that trade, not much threat, so he has all the time in the world to get that Highmane down and then just build on it going forward. And Deerjason, again, just his hand is not too great. He can play the Bloodhoof into the Blood to Ichor again just to avoid the Stampede and Kodo, but he might even want to Blood to Ichor execute and then play the Armorsmith, but that just seems just as weak.
Yeah, it's so rough here. The Warrior deck is so good against most decks that just play an individual large minion. The problem being, of course, those individual large minions, when those individual large minions are Savannah Highmanes, because you have your execute, which you can use to kill it, but you're giving your opponent 2 2/2s here, and not really necessarily a great spot, but here Deerjason with the Blood to Ichor is able to at least make sure the Stampeding Kodo doesn't have a guaranteed kill on that Bloodhoof Brave. So not the best position for Deerjason, but better than really he might have anticipated he would be in against a Savannah Highmane.
Yeah, it's just giving the Kodo multiple options to take out and just try and avoid the Bloodhoof, really, but there's still a lot of options for Cydonia. He has Houndmaster. The Deadly Shot's not going to come into play here, but even Houndmaster, Animal Companion, Unleash as well, if he wants to clear up. He does need to get rid of that Armorsmith, though.
That was actually really, really nice. Getting the Leok there, he can potentially clear off the Bloodhoof Brave in just with these 2 minions here, and does choose to do that. Keeps his Wolf safe and sound alive here. It will be potentially traded into with just the 2/2 on the opposing side.
Yep, so we're going to see the Armorsmith come down. Fireworks was pretty huge here. He's obviously 1 turn away from playing Grom. And I think in this matchup, the Grom's going to come down as removal a lot of the time just to slow the Hunter down. His favor killing off the Leok with the Execute as well.
Yeah, and the reason that, or a potential reason that Deerjason is looking to clear the board here is that the more minions your opponent has going into their turn 8, the scarier it is for you because of Call of the Wild. The immediate Leok on the board is very, very scary when your opponent is able to get Call the Wild, and they can just do so much damage at once.
Yeah, it's scary enough on an empty board.
Yeah.
Never mind with any more minions to mess about with.
But Cydonia does not have that Call the Wild. He does have Stampeding Coda, which will clear out.
And Snipe's the bigger one as well.
Yeah, which is actually quite relevant here.
So with your opponent on one card, is there ever a thought to Deadly Shot this turn?
I think that Cydonia, he's seen a Battle Rage already, so he's not necessarily scared of Battle Rage coming down and giving him trouble. But here, his opponent is going to go ahead and clear this off. He does have the Unleash, so if there are multiple minions like this Armor Smith that does live, he can Unleash, then kill the Armor Smith, then Deadly Shot. So he's able to save the Deadly Shot for a larger minion, like a Ragnaros, that could be a big problem later on.
Yeah, as we're getting to the points now where the Warrior may draw cards like Varian, Ragnaros, is still Malkorok as well knocking around. So
it's always weird, though, when the Hunter's actually the one who has the scarier draws this stage of the game. It's like, other than Varian, there's really nothing that compares to Call of the Wild in terms of just its immediate raw board impact.
Yeah, because the combination of impacting the board and being able to just choose where that 5 damage from Huffer goes, is actually pretty huge. It does look like Cydonia's going for the Unleash into the guaranteed Deadly Shot. So he's saving the Quick Shot, because Quick Shot would have gave him 1 less armor, but the difference between 2 and 1, probably a lot less, and the odds of getting a good Unleash off when your opponent's only on like 1 to 2 cards a turn, pretty low anyway.
It's also the opportunity to potentially just get a card draw from Quick Shot later on, which is this is a matchup that is clearly going very much about resources. Speaking of that, that's really not how Deerjason wanted to have to use his Battle Rage. In a game that is very, very resource intensive, you'd love to be able to Battle Rage for more than 1 or 2, which is all Deerjason's gotten off of his Battle Rages so far.
Yeah, it's really not great, and we can see him suffering from that, just having a Ravaging Ghoul, which he probably would have liked really early on. Cydonia draws one of the strongest cards in the deck, I believe. We've seen recently Stranglethorn Tigers being used more and more in Hunter to give opponents just no way to deal with it, and then it just, it normally always gets in some way or another 10 damage off.
All right,
over the
Malkorok for Deerjason is going to find a bow. All right.
Yeah, so it's okay, it's pretty average.
And yeah, he's going to go ahead and use the bow, clear off the wolf, and it's actually quite good for him. Allows him to clear off all of the tokens as well. Another Quick Shot for Cydonia picked up here, so he can go ahead and cycle through this if he really wants to. He could either Quick Shot, Deadly Shot, clear off the board. He could trade in, and then Quick Shot, Deadly Shot, Quick Shot, draw a card. He wants to try and dig to something else.
Yeah.
Which actually, yeah, he's going to go ahead and clear things off, leave himself with a damaged Tiger, and then Quick Shot to the face to dig a little bit deeper. Finds himself a kill command. So
that was interesting, because he could have gone the other way, not drawn the card, because he's only still got 1 card in hand, right? But it would have left the Tiger difficult to deal with, because it would have been on 4, and there only would have been the bow left. So you're relying then on the Warrior drawing a form of 1 additional damage, and he could have been more all-in on the Tiger than anything else. But he did choose to trade and value the cycle higher, and for that he has Kill Command, and because he's 1 card ahead, he can also play the Toad.
That is a huge Toad. Not really so huge right now, we're into 10 mana. It's only a medium-sized Toad. Good, yeah. Big enough to deal with this this Accolade Pain, though, while only giving a single card. Harrison Jones for Deerjason. I suspect we may see him just play that as a minion at this point.
Yeah, I think so, and the Bloodtaker is going to come down just to stop the Toad having any chance of trading with Harrison, because that is not a trade you want to do. Is he going to hold off?
It looks like, wow. I'm a little surprised to see Deerjason just hold on to the Harrison. Yeah. It feels to me like he's in a position where he needs to just get a clock going. Cydonia has just such powerful late game cards you can draw into, and the likelihood that Cydonia finds a bow, I think, is relatively low. He actually has 2 copies of Eaglehorn Bow.
Yeah.
So, definitely still floating around the deck somewhere.
I think one of the problems for me with that play is that if the bow's drawn and equipped, he's going to attack face with it. So you're only ever going to get one draw and knock off 1 charge, but then the damage has probably already been done, and the damage you lose by not playing Harrison could really impact the game. But speaking of impact, there's Varian Rain, and he's going to start drawing some cards.
What are the armies of Stormwind?
Oh,
I actually think he's guaranteed to be dead. Oh no! Oh my, that is huge.
That Bloodhoof actually saved him.
The Bloodhoof Brave there is actually game-winning for Deerjason. I was thinking, okay, his armor smiths are gone. I thought both of his Braves were gone, but it was just the single one. And Cydonia there had lethal with the attack from the Lion, the high main, plus the kill command, but Deerjason finds a taunt with his King Varian Rin.
Yeah, and now, though, it's happened the other way, where there's actually 17 damage available for Deerjason, but there's a freezing trap drawn.
Yeah.
So one of those is going to get bounced. So he will probably bounce the Weaponsmith, replay it to equip the 2 damage weapon, and put his opponent to 1, potentially.
All right, and
he's just going to kill command phase.
Oh,
that's going to be game as we see Deerjason fist pump there, as he can now proc the freezing trap quite easily, play the Coil Crumb for the instant damage, and that is going to be enough to close out the game. And hey, Varian, doing some work.
Yeah, that was
doing some work.
Absolutely incredible Varian Rin there for Deerjason. We were saying, there were so many powerful cards in Cydonia's deck that he was waiting, but there was Varian Rin for Deerjason, and the king shows up before the wild. He got the call.
Yeah, I think, to be fair, there was, looking at how the game had gone for Deerjason, all his good cards were left, right? Yeah. So the odds on him drawing the powerful minions, the Bloodhoof was the key, of course, but the odds on drawing, cards like we saw Cairn, there was potential Ragnaros, there was a lot of cards left. So Deerjason is going to take that extremely close game. But before we go into the next match, we had a chance to sit down with Cydonia and talk about how he enjoys traveling and exploring. So just check it out.
So I work in healthcare, and a few years ago I started working freelance so I could take sometimes to travel the world. I'm really a curious person, so that's a part of the reason why I like to travel so much. I like experiencing different cultures, so I would like to go pretty much everywhere I haven't been. I really like part about traveling where you see new stuff every day, do new things, taste new things, take a lot of pictures, which brings out the little artistic side I have.
So we see Cydonia there, the next member of the League of Explorers, no doubt. So you see that music playing in the background, pretty apt. But yeah, that was a crazy last game. I think Cydonia's probably a little bit disappointed overall, as he was feeling pretty ahead most of the game, but then Varian just came down and finished it.
Yeah, that was absolutely backbreaking, that one turn. And yeah, even I was just looking at this, I'm like, oh, there's really no way out of this. But that Blood of Brave hitting off Varian not only gave him the defense to survive the turn, but also enough damage to close things out before Cydonia could find anything of his own.
Yeah, because there's not a lot he could have even drawn to, claw back from that. We saw the freezing trap would have helped, but even then, Deerjason had the chance to put him on 1 damage by bouncing the Weaponsmith. So Deerjason's just going to have his Druid and his Shaman left versus all of Cydonia's lineup, minus the Druid, but with the Warlock Band, of course. So I think it's looking pretty good for Deerjason so far.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, that was I think a pretty key win, because as we mentioned at the beginning of that game, typically a matchup that tends to favor the Hunter, even fairly heavily. But Deerjason was able to find what he needed, and now the Shaman deck is one that is able to really find a win against anything.
Yeah.
And then the Druid, well, this is actually the deck that I'm probably the most excited to see of these, because the token Druid deck is one that I think doesn't really get that much respect from a lot of competitive players, but is very powerful, and not just because Yogg-Saron
I was going to say, you refer to it as token Druid, when really all we want to know is Yogg Druid. We just want to see what a Yogg does.
That's my favorite card in the deck. But the whole shell is just very powerful, and all those spells obviously power up Yogg-Saron, but are super strong with Violet Teacher, Power of the Wild. All of that in combination can create some really, really powerful openings.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the decks we've actually not seen too much in competition, which is a surprise, because a lot of players are actually holding top 10 Legend with it. And say it's one of the most consistent performing decks, which is not something you expect too much from a Yogg deck.
Yeah, prior to this, this tournament, the same was true of Cthulhu Druid. We really only saw AKA Wonder playing Cthulhu Druid in the Europe Championship. I didn't really see it much elsewhere in sort of top level competitive play until this event. Now there's a bunch of Cthulhu Druid decks out there. I'm curious to see if players are kind of adapting their strategies around banning the Warlock decks, because that's one of the problems with almost any Druid deck, is they're really, really vulnerable to Zoo. that it's very difficult to catch up to the Zoo deck's openings. Your plays of one big minion that you're innovating out, it's like, okay, power overwhelming, kill it. But the deck's can be pretty strong against some of the other aggressive decks like Shaman, which can, if you're changing your strategy to focus your ban on the Zoo deck, can really open up the possibility for Druid strategies.
Yeah, I think a lot of players at the moment have accepted in Conquest that Shaman's going to be there, and yes, it can probably take a win, but then you just focus on what's left from your opponent, especially in the best of 7, which is the format we are playing, so there's just more decks to pick overall, and the odds on just, at least Shaman or Zoo slipping through are going to happen.
One interesting thing, too, about a Zoo ban, if your opponent, if you're planning on banning Zoo because you assume your opponent's going to have it, it actually makes your Shaman deck more powerful as well, because that's one of the few matchups that's really bad for the aggressive Shaman decks is traditionally Zoo Warlock. So you're making it more difficult for your opponent to deal with your Shaman without banning it, and kind of changing the dynamic of how they might be anticipating the matchup working out as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's really intricate. And when you throw one more deck choice in there for best of 7, it gets even more planning required, as the players are now ready just after that short break. As we said, best of 7, they're going to get comfortable, get ready for the match, and it is going to be Deerjason's Shaman versus Cydonia's Shaman. So this matchup, I've found, is pretty straightforward. The players will very aggressively play for the board early on, and the first person who loses the board normally loses the game.
Yeah, the ability to get in early minion damage is crucial, in particular because the minions hit so hard. We see the Flame Breathe Faceless in both players' hands there, but even just Tunnel Trog and Totem Golem, these hit a lot harder than the minions in most decks for their cost.
Yeah. And it only takes one Flame Tongue Totem to even buff the smallest of minions to start stacking up over time.
Yeah, and the ability to finish off the game with Burn makes the dynamic of the Shaman deck very different than something like Zoo, where it's just this constant fight for the board, because you have Lava Burst, Doomhammer plus Rockbiter, all these things which can just close out the game, even once you do lose the board, assuming you got enough damage in early on.
Yeah. I was really interested. It looked like Deerjason actually... Oh, no, he didn't. He did mulligan. I was going to say, I thought he kept his whole hand. I was like, I'm kind of scared for this game if that was the case. But you just see both players aggressively mulligan for the early drops. And we see Ardent Squire come out from Cydonia turn 1, and being able to answer by Deerjason. But every single turn, you have to think about answers from your opponent. So if Cydonia has a Rockbiter,
which he
then,
does.
Like Rockbiter 1-drop, then it's suddenly going to be a problem. But he has not Rockbiter, but a form of it in the form Flame Tongue Totem, so he can deal with the Trog. And now Deerjason's on the back foot.
He could go ahead and use Coin Rockbiter into a Totem Golem of his own here. So now Deerjason able to clear off Cydonia's threats and play a big one of his own. This is killing the Flame Tongue is pretty crucial here, because something like the Argent Horse Rider in Cydonia's hand can be a big problem for Deerjason to actually preserve his board. We see the crossed fingers from Deerjason. Please, please, please. It is a Mana Tide Totem, which is powerful, but not nearly as impactful in this matchup as a Totem Golem might be.
No, I think the Totem Golem has the most immediate impact overall, but as we can see, the Mana Tide has to be respected, because if you're in a mirror match and your opponent's just factually drawing more cards than you every single turn, you probably are going to lose because it's come out so early in the game. The snowball effect of just simply drawing twice as many cards as your opponent every turn is just too much to handle.
Cydonia does pick up one card from his Mana Tide, but Deerjason takes it down. Now Cydonia with sort of less clear options on this turn.
Yeah, I think regardless, we're going to see a Rockbiter onto the Squire. I don't think there's a realistic way you want to leave any minions up if you can avoid it. And Rockbiter on the Squire that's already got a good amount of work done is a pretty good play, I think.
Yeah, the Rockbiter on the Squire is definitely attractive for fighting for the board. The issue being that you have Doomhammer in your hand. So Rockbiter does have a lot of value if you do hold on to it in terms of just generating even more damage in the fight to the face. Though, as you mentioned, the importance of the board early on. Yes, he could preserve that, but it would mean that he's less likely to be able to actually get minion damage in. Which, while the Doomhammer Rockbiter does a ton, so do minions if they just are able to pile up on the board.
Yeah, and let's be clear as well. If the players run lower health, that would definitely be even more of a consideration, because you can like, oh, I can actually just end the game. But with the players almost on full life, you really do just want to continue fighting for the board. And Cydonia chose to go with the Horse Rider as well, just to fill out his curve and continue to give him multiple options in the following turns.
And Cydonia, he's in a pretty good position here, has full use of his mana this turn, while Deerjason will be overloaded almost entirely next turn. Can drop that Doomhammer and start going to town if he chooses.
Yeah, I think there's even potential for Doomhammer one charge into the Totem Golem, use the Divine Shield, and then go face for the other Doomhammer. Just to start stacking up the aggression, because you do want to get that Doomhammer equipped. The board is really important, but you do want to get that equipped really early and then just start hammering down the pressure against Deerjason here.
Yeah, Doomhammer does a ton of damage, but it takes time to do it.
Yeah.
It can do the big burst alongside Rockbiter, but without it, it needs the full 4 turns being in play in order to get the 16 damage it's capable of doing.
It looks like he's going to continue to favor the minions here. See where that Flame Juggler goes, and it does love the face. It's just smacks Deerjason in the face for 1. So what Cydonia is doing now is he's okay with just waiting for Doomhammer, because he's just going wider on the board, and presuming that Deerjason won't be able to catch up quick enough. We do see Earthshock, which is one of the I think Deerjason's Shaman Dex is the one with the most differences between everyone here. With the addition of the Lava Shock, the Earth Shock, there's Ancestral Knowledge in there as well. Not the most common cards we've seen, but we're going to see Earthshock's going to get some pretty good work done, just straight up killing this Argent Horse Rider.
Yeah, he's going to actually be able to nearly clear the board here. Actually, he is able to completely clear the board rather.
And play the Squire, so this is a really good turnaround for Jason. Now he has the board, and it really is this close. Each player is going to just play for the board so aggressively until they have it secured for more than 1 turn, and then they'll start turning on the heat with the damage.
Yeah, well, it is Doomhammer time for Cydonia. It does choose to clear off the Totem Golem and take out the Divine Shield from that Argent Squire, which is a little surprising.
Yeah, I think he's just setting up to kill it next turn. Yeah, honestly, like, he will really just keep the board clear. It almost plays like Zoo until someone loses the board, then the aggression comes straight to face to finish the game. We do see Ancestral Knowledge come out from Deerjason, so help refill his hand a little bit, gets the Abusive down for that extra damage, and he still has control of the board, and Cydonia's now going to... He has a really powerful turn. They'll just feel like 1 step behind already, but the Doomhammer is definitely going to help even that out.
Yeah, Doomhammer does allow him to just keep pounding away at these minions from Deerjason, but Cydonia is able to build a pretty solid board for himself. Flame Tongue is a nice draw for Deerjason, however, which will allow him to actually chip away here. And that, yes, the Taunt Totem is very valuable to protect that Flame Tongue and ensure that he is able to get value out of it from this board.
Yeah, Deerjason, really interesting list, as we can see here, the Leroy. So I think he's playing 0 Things from Below, which will become super common in the Aggro Shaman list. And he's just going for even more aggression in the form of Leroy, and we can see that from Earthshock as well. Just being able to bypass taunts and go straight to face for the damage.
And here, yeah, Cydonia's going to go ahead and take out the taunt. I imagine he's just going to play out his hand here.
Yep.
He is able to use the Flame Tongue to buff up his Wolf, take out his opponent's Flame Tongue, and... yeah, it's going to send this hammer to the face. A really big board here. And Deerjason, he has a great finisher in his hand in that Leroy Jenkins, but he is behind, and that's not what you're looking for.
So, like, this is the turn. Oh, he does get the Totem Golem, though, so that's as good as it was ever going to get for Deerjason's role in the Totemic. And the Taunt as well is going to help, but that was the turn where Cydonia needs to really cash in now. Ooh. And with a Flameweave Faceless, when you're ahead on board and you drop a 7/7, you're feeling pretty good about life.
Yeah, this is definitely a really strong spot for Cydonia here. Picks up the 7/7, is able to, if he chooses, just clear out this entire board as well.
Yeah, I think that wouldn't be too bad at all. Your opponent's still on a reasonable sum of life, and if you leave anything up, it just gives your opponent options, right? Whereas if you just remove all those options and leave him on the card that he's been holding for a couple of turns now, there might even be a point where Cydonia is sort of given a nod that that card might be Leroy, as he is aware of the list, and it's one of the few cards that you wouldn't just play, float so much mana every turn as this deck.
And Cydonia, trying to decide exactly how he wants to divide his attacks here. He can choose to attack the Wrath of Air into the 3/2. It looks like he's maybe trying to preserve more of his board, though. And just leave, yeah, he's going to take a bit of damage, preserve some of his board here, and leave up all of his minions, get that Flaming Faceless down. He still has, looks like 10 He's actually 1 short, I believe, next turn if he were to just send everything to the face. But Deerjason not really able to break through this board himself.
Yeah, this is really rough, and I think Cydonia's felt comfortable taking a little bit additional damage because of the size of Deerjason's hand, combined with the fact he's seen a lot of burn already anyway in the early turns of fighting for the board. And this is a tough one. I mean, I imagine we're going to have to see Rockbiter into the Feral Spirit, but that actually just enables lethal next turn on board, so Deerjason is just going to roll the totem, hope for a taunt, not get it, and that might actually just be game there and then.
Well,
because he can't really attack anything.
Cydonia is 1 damage off.
Yeah.
He has 17 damage on the board right now.
Or a slightly prolonged game then, because if he uses the Rockbiter on himself to trade, then it just hands enough damage to his opponent.
Right.
If he does nothing,
it moves over the flame tile.
Exactly. And if he does nothing, his opponent gains a turn.
Right.
So there's not a real good choice here.
Yeah, the game is not necessarily over next turn, but it's over next turn.
I mean, is there any point actually Leroy into the 4-3 and then Rockbiter into the 0 into the
yeah,
flame?
I mean that's
the problem is
option.
it's a play to stay alive, but it actually does nothing in terms of him winning the game.
And Cydonia picks up a Tunnel Trog, will not win the game on the spot, but able to send Deerjason down very low. He's going to go ahead and, yeah, he uses his hero power first. That gives him the highest chance of getting a Taunt Totem, which is clearly what he's looking for.
Yeah.
If he traded in the C-Ring Totem first, he only has a 50-50 on getting a Taunt Totem, whereas by using his hero power first, he has a much better chance.
Yeah,
actually, no, it was 50-50 versus, yeah. Anyway,
Tunnel Trog
wins.
Not going to be enough.
So, yeah, it will be Cydonia who is able to even up the match 2-2 with the Shaman Mirror match.
Yeah, it's a really close series so far, but before we get into the next game, we have a few words with Deerjason on being the wild card of this tournament.
I've always been the person that's always the middle ground. I wasn't someone to be feared. I was always that one person, that one wild card in the tournament that might do something great or might just fail.
Similar to a deer, Jason is small, he's swift, he's nimble, he's clever. But like a deer, he's susceptible to getting caught in the headlights right before BlizzCon.
Right now, the only goal I have is to make it to BlizzCon. I'm taking little steps the entire way.
It's now his time to sort of prove to the world and the Hearthstone community that he should be respected.
I want to be the one person that people see, hey, that person I know, he's a pretty good Hearthstone player. You don't want to face him at all. Praise Yogg.
Now we see Deerjason praise Yogg, and he is worshipping Yogg pretty hard, and to win the trophy that we can see on the screen now. That's a pretty nice trophy.
Yeah, I'm kind of jealous. Those trophies are great. They have a lot of heft to them too. It doesn't look that heavy, but it's actually pretty solid there.
It's all about the weight. But yeah, it's going to be 2-2 at the moment as the guys are going into the next match pretty soon, and it's got to be tense. The series is extremely close, and the winner moves on to tomorrow, and the loser's going to go home.
Yeah, definitely a tough spot for both of these players. Single elimination, as we've mentioned, a very high stakes situation, and these players have 2 games left to win for each of them. The Shaman deck for Cydonia now out of the way. What do you think is going to fall back on next?
Yeah, it's going to be,
we'll find out.
You know what? I think, Kibler, it's going to be Dragon Warrior.
Brilliant analysis, Raven. Brilliant.
Called it. I mean,
wow.
If you've got it, you've got it, Kibler. What can I say?
Well, Cydonia's got it if it is Dragon Warrior, so I'm excited for this.
Yeah, this is probably your go-to Warrior deck. Or at least it has some of your favorite cards in it, I imagine.
That it does.
But how do you think it lines up versus Shaman?
So I think that one of the reasons, I had a chance to talk to both Rosti and Cydonia about their choice to bring specifically Dragon Warrior. And Rosti feels like it's basically better against all of the non-warrior decks than sort of Tempo Warrior. That it is able to play like a much stronger early game because it doesn't have cards like Battle Rage, doesn't have a bunch of Whirlwinds and such, which are strong cards in some matchups, but against decks like Shaman, end up kind of falling flat. You have a handful of these fairly mediocre cards in most situations, but you're replacing those with things like Blackwing Corruptor that has huge immediate impact.
And even
on the board.
Fairy Dragon, Alex Straz's champion, and Alex Straz's champion actually, when it's live,
champion is
it's
so
scary.
Good. That card is so good.
Your opponent plays Tunnel Trog, you just kill it and still have a 3/2.
Even Fairy Dragon, the fact that Fairy Dragon is able to kill a Tunnel Trog if your opponent has Lightning Bolt. If your opponent has Lightning Bolt, most minions that you play at that point, they just Lightning Bolt and attack you, but they have to have Rock Biter to kill Fairy Dragon. So, here though, Cydonia does have that Alex Straz's champion, but the Totem Golem on turn 1, even bigger.
Yeah, and the problem as well is if he goes to for Blood to Ica, the 2/2 gets killed by the Totem Golem and still lives, and that's the real issue here. So I don't know if we'll see Alex Straz's champion anyway. Maybe even just go face with it and then try and get your opponent to react. But if there's a Rock Biter, a Lightning Bolt, all these cards just deal with Alex Straz's champion and then just allows the Totem Golem to continue just piling on the pressure.
Yeah, Cydonia could choose to just armor up here, and then next turn he can play the Alex Straz's champion and Blood to Icar, kill the Totem Golem. He's just going to go ahead and fire off the Blood to Icar though. Does get himself a 2/2.
Yep, so we're going to see how Deerjason reacts to this. I imagine it is going to be some form of removal, and he is going to go for the Rock Biter, which is understandable as it doesn't overload him and unlocks his turn 3 Feral Spirit.
This does give Cydonia the opportunity to use Alex Straz's champion to remove the Totem Golem. And in this kind of spot, he could still play the Frothing Berserker. That is another option. I imagine he likely wants to fight for the board a little bit harder here. Though the Frothing Berserker, it doesn't die on board. There's only really Lava Burst that kills it kind of directly.
And you've just seen Rock Biter.
Right, he still has the Alex Straz's champion as backup the follow.
Yeah, I think I think the idea here is you go Frothing. If it doesn't die, Alex Straz's champion trading into something buffs it up, which means Frothing can probably kill one of the minions as well.
Here, though, the Feral Spirits, this will make things a little bit complicated, ensure that Deerjason gets more hits with the Golem. Ooh, the War Axe is an insane draw from Cydonia.
He can clear the board
he
and have both minions still alive. This is insane.
Yeah, he can go ahead and use that War Axe. The champion takes down one, the Berserker takes down another, the War Axe finishes off the Totem Golem, clears the board, ends the turn with a 7 attack Berserker and that Alex Straz's champion. So this is the power of that Dragon Warrior deck coming into action. And look at his hand too.
Yeah, he can't because he's overloaded. He can't actually deal with both of the minions. He has to just play Abusive Sergeant, which is going to be cleaned up by the War Axe. And this 3/1 Alex Straz's champion is going to keep chipping away.
Or by Corruptor even.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a lot of options that Cydonia has here. And he is the one who is on offense now. And Shaman does not play well from behind. Shaman is a deck that is great at pressing an advantage, but look at Deerjason's hand. In particular, the version that Deerjason's playing with Leroy can definitely suffer. But this is a lot of damage. As we're actually just counting it up, I see you do some math in your fingers.
Yeah.
He has 19 damage in his hand, but A, that's not enough. His opponent's at 21. And B, he does not have the time to cast it because he is under so much pressure from these minions from Cydonia.
Yeah, I think with this much damage on board, because the Corruptor, I was weighing up, does Deerjason just have to go face? Like, does he just have to commit, go for the damage, hope he draws enough additional damage, and finish the game there? But the problem is, there's, 5, 6, 8, there's 11 damage next turn, for, if Cydonia chooses to use a weapon, right? And then he can just do the same again the following turn, minus the 3, but he's probably already played a minion by then. So there just wouldn't be enough time, as you said, too much damage, which just forced Deerjason to Lava Burst the Corruptor, and then Cydonia just goes, okay, Small Crown Elite, Fairy Dragon as well, let's go.
Yeah, and Deerjason is under a lot of pressure here. He's having to use his burn spells as defensive measures, really not where you want to be. Even if he were able to get sort of a window where he can kind of cobble together enough damage, he's playing against a warrior. His opponent has armor up, which is a hero power.
Yeah, and the second you see just Lava Burst face, for example, the warrior would then naturally armor up every single turn. There's no even question. You'd have the mana to do so, and you'd focus on just gaining as much health every turn as possible, and then just putting yourself further out of reach. So Deerjason's going to continue on with the Rock Biter to kill off the Quarterfinal Elite. So that's already cashed in 8 damage over the course of the charge and then the clear up.
Really hoping this Flame
Juggler has to be a god.
All right.
Okay.
The thing is, even though he just got the best possible result from that Flame Jugger, oh look, another Corruptor. Just able to keep generating threat, keep that War Axe so he has the ability to generate that extra damage without spending mana on a future turn. Cydonia is just absolutely dominating this game.
Yeah, and I feel like Doomhammer's come too little too late. Deerjason, just that one turn with the War Axe draw was insane.
And it was, you know, the way that Cydonia navigated his early turns, we were sort of debating that turn 3 of, okay, well, he could just play reactively here. He could play the Frothing Berserker, or rather play the Champion's Trade. The Frothing Berserker opened up such a huge, advantageous possibility when he did pick up that War Axe to just let him totally turn the corner and go on the offensive.
Yeah, and we can even see now in hand, Cydonia got 3 cards still, so something this deck can run a little bit low of is actually resources. But two of those cards, two of the cards are Azure Drake, so you can just keep cycling there. At this point, if he really wanted to, he could just armor up then Finley, but he doesn't even need. He could just armor up pass at this point, I think. Maybe even just play the Ghoul if he wants to. Why not? Just go for Finley.
Steady shot.
Yeah.
Get him.
Yeah, I mean, you just pile even more pressure on. How does the Shaman actually do what, 23 damage next turn? Because he's going to die if he doesn't.
Yeah, there's a 7/7, but that is not going to do nearly enough.
Yeah, Deerjason's just going to take the time, see what happens with the totem. Hope for a taunt probably, but even a taunt totem would not be enough in the long term. So Deerjason's going to lose, and Cydonia's going to take his 3rd win and be 1 game away of moving on to tomorrow.
Dragons, baby.
I expect
that was an
less.
absolutely dominating performance, though.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking during the pre-show about how Rosti had showed up to the preliminary with this Dragon Warrior deck that's kind of been unheralded since. You know, he did very well at the preliminary with that deck, and then PNC actually was saying that he ran into it on ladder and just decided, okay, this deck is great. I'm gonna bring this too.
Yeah, it's looking really good. But before we move on to the next game, we have a couple of words from Cydonia.
Like the first time I got Legend, I was playing Zoo, which is the first deck everyone will play when you don't have any cards. I just noticed I was good enough to get Legend with that deck. But afterwards, I tried to learn new decks, and at some point you just get good enough that you will get Legend regardless of whatever you do. So at first, it's really good to just play one deck. You know how to play well and not always switch and change things around. After a while, it just comes naturally.
Yeah, so we have Cydonia there, just having a quick talk about deck choice and the way he approaches the game overall, and it's looking like it's working pretty well so far.
Absolutely. You know, he's got a lineup that I really like. You know, not just because there's Dragon Warrior, not just because
you don't have to lie to me, Cable. It's because of the Dragon. 100%.
That's a big part of it. I said not just because of Dragon Warrior. It's a really contributing factor, but he has a very strong lineup here, and his final deck, another very strong one. He just has to win with this Hunter deck, and Deerjason still has Shaman and his Yogg Druid deck. So I'm kind of hoping we go to a game 7 just so we get a chance to see that deck.
Yeah, disappointing for Deerjason. We've not seen the Yogg come out to play yet, but he is going to be on his Shaman this game against the Hunter, and he's going into this matchup probably feeling fairly confident. It's a pretty decent matchup for the Shaman, I think. I think the Hunter has to draw very well to be able to defend and then be able to finish the game out without taking too much damage, because Hunter, not a class known for its healing.
Yeah, the mid-range Hunter decks tend to do very well against the other mid-range decks because they go over the top very well with Savannah Highmane, with Call of the Wild. They're less strong against the more aggressive decks. They really, really lean on Houndmaster and being able to keep a beast in play, get that Houndmaster to taunt up the beast in order to stop that incoming damage. But Shaman, if they get a good start and then have the burn to finish it off, can even go around the Houndmaster as well.
Yeah, because there's even, I mean, the key part of getting the Houndmaster out on a decent-sized beast is you just sort of buy yourself 1 turn's worth of damage. But we are going into the beginning now, and we see a turn 1 tracking with quite a few interesting options here. There's already an Alec in hand for Cydonia, so he might choose to go for the removal because, Quick Shot and Kill Command are very good to just clear off these early Shaman minions.
It's interesting because Quick Shot is great if your opponent plays a Trogon tournament, which is probably why he chose to take that Quick Shot right here. He doesn't want to just get trogged, but We're going to see Deerjason with coin into Flame Juggler. Okay. So the Flame Juggler is also susceptible to the quick shot as well, which can allow Cydonia to, not fall behind on the board here.
Yeah, I think he went for the Flame Juggler there. He had no 1-mana play if he coined out the Totem Golem.
Yep.
And now, now he has options of going second Flame Juggler if it looks like he needs the extra potential 1 damage, or he can then go into the Totem Golem and build on that. We do see the quick shot used to remove the minion there, and just as we saw earlier in the Hunter and Shaman matchup, just to reduce the speed in which the Shaman's going to start to snowball.
And here, Cydonia was really hoping that Deerjason played another Flame Juggler because he has that bow waiting in the wings to take out another 3-health minion. The Totem Golem just out of range of the bow, so Cydonia going to go ahead and play Huge Toad in the hopes that his opponent chooses to trade into it, and the 1 point of damage goes to the Totem Golem here.
Yeah, we do see the Flame Juggler looks like it's going to be the favored play here from Deerjason. The ping does go to face. And there goes the trade. So he played the Flame Juggler first to try and get that, give the odds.
Face.
Yeah, give the odds on that 1 damage from the Death Rattle, either hitting the Flame Juggler or the face. And it did hit the face, so actually the best outcome overall for Deerjason.
So Cydonia now has a couple of options again. The Infested Wolf lines up pretty well trying to trade into Deerjason's minions. Eagle from Bow can stop some damage immediately. He does have the opportunity to potentially clear off the Totem Golem and then set up the Stampeding Kodo for the following turn as well.
Yeah, there's definitely a few options here. I think one of the things as well is you always want potential beasts on the board, which is why I think he's gone for the Wolf now, because if he draws Houndmaster, it makes such a huge impact. Deerjason already hovering over the 7/7, the Flame Wreath Faceless itself. One of the more powerful cards in the deck, and definitely going to cause some problems for Cydonia, as he doesn't at the moment have a real great answer.
And Deerjason definitely respecting the threat of a Houndmaster, wants to ensure that if one does come down, it isn't able to create a large taunt minion here. Cydonia has that Kodo, which could take out the Flame Juggler, but he is pretty much definitely going to take the 7 damage to the face from that Flame Wreath Faceless.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that's probably going to happen. He does have the other option as well of maybe going Elec into Bow. You still kill the 2/2, cashing the Bow for next turn. But you are taking more damage, and the Elec's not as big, so easy to clear up for the Shaman. So he's going to go with the Kodo, guaranteed kill, keep the Spider on the board, and then just hope he can deal with the Flame Wreath next turn.
Deerjason now, couple of options. He does have the ability to just try and set up a Trog here. He could, play a Trog and make that big, just clear off the Kodo here. That does leave him open to the possibility of a Houndmaster clearing off his Trog, maybe a Deadly Shot, plus a, what am I thinking? Quick Shot, that's what it is.
That's the one.
Does respect the possibility of that Houndmaster, though. Wants to ensure that there's no big taunt here. Cydonia can finally start using this removal. He has Kill Command to take out the 7/4, and then Bow, which can take out the Trog. So this is, I imagine, what we're going to see. Yeah, he does Kill Command, finally take out that 7/7. Ended up never taking a hit to the face.
Yeah, I think this is displays the power of Hunter playing Deadly Shot at the moment, because he could have actually just Lava Bursted the 3/5 and then gone face and left a 1/1 on the board. But because, if the second you leave the minion up, you just know Deadly Shot's going to come out. Uses the Spider there just to ping 1 damage onto the totem, set it up for a kill next turn.
And he is still trying to play around that Deadly Shot here. Decides to spread out his board, making another totem, playing another 7/7. Definitely a scary situation for Cydonia.
But we are edging towards that magical turn 8 for Hunter, where suddenly Call the Wild becomes a bit of a problem for the Shaman player.
Yeah, Cydonia, still at a healthy 27 life. Deerjason has a lot of cards in hand, so he can't be feeling too great. As well as, of course, the 7/7 in play. Ooh, finds a Stranglethorn Tiger. That's really big.
Yeah.
Because a Stranglethorn Tiger means that he is able to play a large minion that Deerjason doesn't really have great tools to remove because it's stealth. So he's guaranteed to have something in play when he plays the Call of the Wild on 8 mana to let him both potentially trade into big things on the board or just send a lot of damage to Deerjason's face.
Yeah, and Cydonia's just taking his time here, but the benefit of drawing the Tiger based on the board state is there's no real, you know, fiery bat plus quick shot. Doesn't really do too much. So it's like, yeah, this is actually, I've got the space to play the Tiger, so I'm just going to get it down and, as you said, build on that Call of the Wild turn next turn.
And
This is a lot of damage, though.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Deerjason is able to line up the Flame Tongue. I imagine we'll see him trade in first. Yeah, he ends up maneuvering this such that he gets to trade off and then send the 9 to face.
Yeah, just getting the most of Flame Tongue there. I think trading into the 1/1 is nice here. The one damage always comes back from the healing totem itself, and also you just give the hunter less options. Having one big minion is great, but you can only attack with it once, right? So this just narrows down the options for Cydonia here. But as we can see, Call the Wild is an option, so he will, if he wants to, Call the Wild and clear up. He can clear up both the taunts and kill off the Flame Tongue totem potentially.
Yeah, I expect we'll see the bow go into one of the wolves here, and then probably the tiger as well, and then Huffer clears off the Flame Tongue. So able to you know, remove pretty much all of Deerjason's board, but pretty much isn't all. There's still a 7/7 waiting there, and a lot of burn. Oof, that's 13 just straight to the face in Deerjason's
And he has
hand.
Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, he can burst the taunt. 7 goes to the face. There's going to be 9 damage left in his hand. This is going to be very tough for Cydonia to come back from. A single point of damage will be enough to close out this game if he does.
And Deerjason's on 27 health. That's a lot of damage to come back from.
Yeah, but Deerjason is you know, in a spot here where he's debating, okay, do I want to use my Lightning Bolt to clear off one of your minions?
Yeah, I think because he has Ancestral Knowledge as well, he can cast them all next turn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He is overloaded slightly as well, so it's an interesting one.
Yeah.
He does have so much damage, and the odds on him drawing some additional damage are actually pretty high in this deck anyway.
But Cydonia, he has 13 on board. You know, I have to imagine that he's just going to be going and clearing everything from this board here.
Yeah, he's going to drop all the minions. He is able to use the quick shot if he wants this turn to cycle. And use it to clear off the 7/7 and just, like you said, clear as much of the board as possible. There's a deadly shot. Something he probably wanted a little bit earlier on in this matchup.
Yeah, and he can kill the 1/1 with his Leok here and send 6 to the face, which would leave Deerjason with no damage on board. He just needs 1 more to clear things out. But if he leaves the 1/1 up, that is lethal.
But the thing is, I could understand not leaving it up, because you do need to kill your opponent, right? Like, you need to do all the damage you can get.
Yeah.
So this choice will make or break Cydonia's turn.
And he's debating all the way to the end of the rope. He does kill it. Oh, wow. He even kills the healing totem. Wants to play around. Oh, but there's Leroy.
Yeah, so he is going to finish the game, and we see the benefit of Deerjason playing a slightly more aggressive list, and he's just able to cash in on that on the end and finish the game with Leroy. And it is going to be 3-3. These guys taking it all the way to the final game.
And this will come down to the mid-range Hunter deck from Cydonia against the Yogg token Druid from Deerjason.
We got to see Yogg.
Will he be praising Yogg at the end of this? We'll find out.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting game. As yeah, they're forced on the Yogg deck. And how do you think this is actually going to work out?
This is not really a matchup that I've seen a ton of. It's one where both decks have the ability to do very powerful things. The Druid deck obviously relies fairly heavily on Wild Growth and Innervate. I think that this game may very well come down to how good of an opening that Deerjason is able to find. This isn't the sort of matchup that comes down to a huge Yogg at the end. This is a matchup that comes down to what do the middle turns of the game look like? What do the early turns of the game look like?
Yeah, but before we get into the last game to decide who's going to go on to day 2, we have sat down with to see a few words from Deerjason.
When I play a game, I try not to overanalyze my opponent. Most people make mistakes when they think their opponent has the perfect hand. Hey look, my opponent has to remove for this minion, so I won't play this minion. That's a horrible excuse. You play this minion because it's your best play in your current situation.
Wise words from Deerjason there, just stating the fact that you need to play the best turns possible, and if you continue to play around, a card your opponent may have, that's when you get yourself in some trouble a lot of the time.
There's sort of the transition from new player who doesn't really play around anything, they just play their cards, to an experienced player who thinks, oh, my opponent could have this, so I want to play around it. And at some point, players start playing scared. Oh, I don't want to play this because if he has this card, then I could lose to it. Well, at some point, you need to evaluate, okay, well, if he has that, I can't win anyway, so I'm going to play my card.
Yeah.
And
you make your opponent have the card, right? That's what you have to do.
You can't play scared.
Exactly.
You need to put yourself in a position to win, and sometimes you can't afford to play around things. So definitely a wise perspective from the young player.
Yeah, we are going into the last game between these two players. This is everything on the line. The winner continues on and the loser does go home. It's going to be Cydonia's Hunter again, who's been having some trouble with, versus Deerjason's Yogg Druid, the deck we really wanted to see, and luckily we did get to see it so far. So we'll see how it performs in this matchup specifically.
And this opening hand, I would expect we'd see Deerjason send all of it back. He really needs to find, as you mentioned earlier, those wild growths, those innervates. He's playing against a deck that can put on a lot of pressure. He's not going to have time to set up, the big Nourish plays, the big Yogg Saron plays at the end of the game. He needs to play as a sort of mid-range minion deck, which is really where the Hunter deck shines. So this is going to be a tough one for Deerjason to find. Oh, but speaking of powerful mid-range minion style plays, Fandral with a Raven Idol and Innervate to play it early, that is a great draw from Deerjason.
Yeah, it's looking really good for Deerjason, but Cydonia does have a pretty nice draw himself. He's got his early minions, he can double 2-drop, turn 1, turn 2, and start piling on the pressure onto Deerjason here. And he has Animal Companion as well. Ancient
of War wins that joust pretty handily.
Yeah, I think so.
And yeah, Deerjason, this is a situation where he's going to go ahead and innervate out this Fandral. This is obviously a great spot. It's good for him to know that his opponent, if he is wants to be able to kill this Fandral, the only real option is to trade his minion and quick shot.
Yeah, that's the only card in the deck.
He's played it before the opening for Kill Command or for Deadly Shot, so he'll at least gain guaranteed value from a Raven Idol or from a Feral Rage.
That looks like some pretty good value.
Well, it's interesting. He can Feral Rage.
He can kill off both minions and keep his Fandral alive.
That's actually that's a pretty great draw. It's going to allow him. To get 8 life, clear the board here. This means that there's no possibility of his opponent just maintaining tempo while pressuring him. So
and also
very strong play.
Hunter doesn't have a great way of dealing 1 damage that aren't like random death rattle effects, right? So we might actually see Cydonia kill Command. And if he does, then that is a huge victory for Deerjason. He's already got value from his Fandral, gaining so much health and clearing off the minion. And there we go, yeah.
The kill
and this is the kind of threat that Fandral provides. Like, you cannot leave that guy up.
There's Yogg.
And it's golden as well.
Oh, praise him.
A true believer we have in Deerjason here as he crafts, or probably crafted golden Yogg.
Oh, discovers an Innervate. That's a great discover there. Allows him to actually play an Azure Drake this turn. So this is what we were saying was so important in this matchup. The tempo in the early turns. The Hunter has most of the tools, but Deerjason found Innervate. He discovered another Innervate. Now he's the one who's ahead, and that's a really strong position for him to be in.
Yeah, and especially with Nourish as well, because he's got the board at the moment, he can finding time for Nourish in a lot of matchups is difficult, right? But now he can either Nourish to ramp up, or maybe even refill his hand based on what he's looking at.
Ooh, a second swipe here.
I think you still go for Nourish.
Yeah, you definitely need to Nourish here, I think. Well, I mean, he could attack and swipe the face, which would clear the board, and do 5 damage to his opponent.
I mean, he can Nourish and then... oh, he's actually... Yeah, great swipe.
I think that he recognizes here. I think his thought here is kind of what we were saying before. There's not great ways for the Hunter to punish this 1 damage
that's very true, yeah.
On his Azure Drake. And he feels like, I imagine, that he wants to ensure that he's the one who stays ahead. If he just plays Nourish, draws some cards, gains some mana, doesn't leave him in a position where he really has any real board presence, and if he falls behind, his opponent can start being the one who's really applying pressure.
Yeah, I was interested to see if he was going to go for Nourish and then trade Hero Power 1 the Spiders. And then even if the Spider has like a Houndmaster, well, it has to trade into the 4-1, right? So that was the that was the idea for that one, but he did go for a slightly different play, and Looks like he's doing okay there, drawing a few more cards, has Harrison for any pesky Eaglehorn bows that come out.
Though Cydonia does have this Savannah High main, which, you know, it's tough for any reactive class to deal with, and Deerjason is in a very reactive position here.
Yeah, it looks like Deerjason actually doesn't remulch either, so he doesn't have any, you know, on-the-spot direct removal.
He does have quite a bit of removal in his hand, though. He can either swipe or Wrath for cycle, then Wrath for 3 damage to kill the Leok, but no way to actually take down the high main right now. Actually, it looks like he may just go for this Harrison Jones, though.
Yeah, I mean, whichever way he goes about trying to like clear up a bit of the board, I think it always leaves too much available. And there's no really clean way here. It looks like he's going to just try and build a board of his own and just try and start to challenge. Because suddenly, once the trades happen, all this extra removal do so much more work in the form of
Cydonia,
swipe
though,
and Wrath.
he has Unleashed the Hounds with that Leok. And that can be really tough for Deerjason to survive here, really. You know, obviously Unleashed isn't going to kill him, but it can wipe off pretty much his entire board.
We see Cydonia go for the... oh, we could just go into...
Just another high main if he wants
How much do you like a second high main?
I mean, I like high main quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a pretty good card, I've been told.
Except during the Lion King, he makes me very sad.
Yeah,
Such a jerk. Poor Mufasa.
Why did you have to do this to us, high main? But this is a pretty huge... Cydonia's hand overall lines up really well versus like the rest of Jason's hand. He has Deadly Shot to deal with any sort of big, like Ancient of War, like we saw earlier, because he has the ability to clear up as well. He did go for the high main, so I wouldn't even be too upset with just even double trade this turn, although he might just cash the damage in for face. What's a single Harrison going to do against 2 high mains and a damaged Leon?
Yeah, there's an Ancient of War, but this is the power of Deadly Shot in Cydonia's hand. You know, he's able to, you know, play a big taunt, but it is not guaranteed to really get the job done. Thankfully for Deerjason, he does have the Harrison still waiting in the wings to at least hope to absorb the damage. Where does this Deadly Shot go? Oh, it takes down the tree.
And
that
even
is
has,
huge
even has
for
Tiger
Cydonia
now, so there's just so much power he can put onto the board. What can Deerjason even do at this point? 2 full health
He can
high
draw
mains.
Innervate, and Yogg can do anything.
Yeah, that's true. Oh my god, if he Wild Growth last turn, he could have played Yogg and saved the day.
We see just Deerjason looks so stressed. I mean, what can he do here? He has
a board.
3 Wraths and a swipe.
This is a board like no one can come back from. Yeah, you know, maybe maybe last words for me, but this is very, very difficult. It's not often you see a board this powerful. But the Tiger being stealthed as well, just compounds it so much.
We may see a cycled Wrath. I'm trying to think of what
would Wrath into Ancient of
yeah, you could find another Ancient. That's possible. Okay, a taunt. That could do something.
Yeah, that helps. He's just buying turns to Yogg. That's all that matters. Get to turn 10.
Yeah, just a very little damage. Ooh, that could be.
This has to be a Misha, or Deerjason's lost.
Yeah.
This is the most important animal companion for Cydonia ever, and it's Leok.
And that is going to be it. Cydonia is going to defeat Deerjason and move on to the semifinals of the American Spring Championship.
Yeah, so Cydonia's going to take it with a pretty powerful, you know, like he's kind of struggled with the Hunter early on, we saw him just not quite get there. But that last game was just pure dominance, and we saw from the early tracking into the second high main, and just Deerjason not just being able to get hold of that board. We saw him